Hello, comrades, and welcome back to Ushanka Show, stories about life in the Soviet Union. Здравствуйте, дорогие товарищи! В эфире программа Ushanka Show. Today we're gonna read and discuss another chapter of the Declassified KGB report from July 26, 1976. This document was discovered by the Ukrainian historian Eduard Andryushenko. He has his own YouTube channel called KGB Files, and I will provide the link below this video. Initially, I was planning to make just one video about this document, but my attention to detail and some natural curiosity made it way longer, so that'll be video number 3. In my video, American Spies Report, we talked about KGB chasing 2 US diplomats in Ukrainian city of Cherkasy, where they were hanging around some tank division there. And I have another video about Photography USA exposition of 1976, which happened in Kiev, and this report covered that issue, as well as Moscow, Leningrad, and other large cities of the Soviet Union. And I just have to tell you that I'm very proud of my discovery about the famous American Polaroid guy. So that's the guy who was taking Polaroid pictures during this exhibition and giving away the photos. So people in different cities mentioned the long-hair Polaroid guy, and his name was John Bierly from Muskegon, Michigan. And I discovered that later on he became an ambassador of the United States in Russia for quite a few years, like 1991, 1998. Then there was a comment from one of my viewers who lives in Muskegon, Michigan, and he mentioned something else extremely interesting about John, about his father. His nickname is Jumpin' Joe, but I'll make a separate video on that topic. And now we're returning to our KGB document, and we're going to read the chapter called Foreigners' Visit of the House of Prayers in Kiev. So here we go. Kiev, on July 19, 1976. And you know, it's so interesting because I was there, not in Kiev, because in the summer I spent my time in the village, but on July 19, 1976, I just turned 5 days prior. So that's pretty cool. So on July 19, 1976, the city of Kiev was visited by the Brastings couple. So that's a husband and wife, the guests of United States Embassy in the Soviet Union. So pretty important couple. They were escorted by R. Porter, unfortunately I don't know his first name, a manager of so-called advanced group of U.S. consulate in Kiev. So Moscow had the main embassy, United States Embassy, and Kiev just had a consulate, and this guy worked there. And I love this next sentence. Mr. Porter is a CIA agent. It's just amazing. Meanwhile, Mr. Brasting is a pastor of Dutch Reformed Church and knows many church personalities. They use the word авторитеты, like influencers in the USSR. And I looked it up, so Dutch Reformed Church, it's kind of interesting, I never knew about it, but it's a pretty large church here in the United States. The foreigners visited Seventh-day Adventist prayer house, so not church, but prayer house, located at Yamskaya Street 70. And here I need to pause and say thank you to Google, because in less than a minute I just entered the address in Russian, Yamskaya Street 70, Kiev, and sure enough, now there is a Seventh-day Adventist church, quite a beautiful building. So sometimes after 1991, they took down the house and they built a real big church. Okay, so back to the document. During the conversation with Seventh-day Adventist pastor, SDA, Mr. Porter, that CIA agent, presented himself as the United States consul in Kiev and informed the pastor that he is planning now to visit services regularly. So it sounds like he was there for the very first time, and he got interested to visit that house of prayers. And what else is interesting, that KGB report somehow knew what was going on during the conversation. So they were, eavesdropping or something. I found it quite curious that they knew what the conversation was about. So once again, it's 1976, Cold War in full bloom. And then next sentence says, the pastor handed Mr. Porter a requested address list of all prayer homes of Baptists and Adventists in Kiev and their schedule of work. So once again, how did they know that? But somehow they, first of all, he requested that address list, and the list was ready to go. So this whole thing is quite curious. And the next sentence, KGB mentioned that оперативным путем, so by some operative means, which is eavesdropping, or they had, not sure how they managed to knew about the conversation, but during the conversation between Pastor Brestings, so this guy of the Dutch Reformed Church, and Mr. Porter, the CIA agent, Mr. Porter mentioned that exhibition Photography USA that was going on in Kiev at that time played a big role in making an impression on the Soviet people, especially youth. Thousands of Russians, which is, especially if you talk about if it's exhibition going on in Ukraine, it was probably thousands of Ukrainians, or at least you could say Soviets, but he said thousands of Russians visited the exposition and learned about the United States. Conversations with youth, it's a great opportunity, a great benefit for us, said Porter. Moscow office of KGB got a similar report. So that's quite an interesting report. I mean, I learned for myself that we already had Seventh-day Adventist prayer houses, not churches, but at least prayer houses back in the 70s in Kiev. I had no idea. Of course, now they spread all over. If you Google SDA church in Kiev, Ukraine, they like mushrooms after the rain all over the Kiev and the neighboring little towns. So I'm not sure how many Adventists now in Ukraine, but definitely quite a few. And while we're on the topic of Seventh-day Adventists, I want to mention some fact that maybe some of you don't know. If you remember Boris Nemtsov, a guy, he was a Russian politician, opposition politician that got killed right by the Kremlin wall. His sister is apparently one of the big wigs in Seventh-day Adventist movement in Russia, and that was the reason why SDA people didn't have a lot of trouble in Russia, since they have a krysha, as we call it in Russian, high-placed politician that was kind of protecting their interests. So after he was killed, there was a lot of panic among the Seventh-day Adventists that maybe Putin will start shutting down their operations in Russia. Because SDA even has a university in Russia. It's located in Zaoksky. And I know those things because I live in Berrien Springs, Michigan, which is like SDA capital of the world. And half of the town, if not more, are Seventh-day Adventists. So that's a well-known fact. Anyway, it's all I have for you today. I hope you learned something new. As always, don't forget to like this video. Maybe share with your friends. And we'll talk to you soon.
My name is Sergey, and I used to be armed and dangerous back in the USSR. So today we're going to talk again about declassified KGB documents from 1967 about events in Soviet Ukraine. This document was discovered by Ukrainian historian Eduard Andriushenko. I'll post link to his Facebook page below this video. My special thanks и огромное спасибо to all my supporters on patreon.com. Thank you, comrades. It's greatly appreciated. So this is the continuation of my previous video, Secret KGB Files, 1967, Citizens Uprising in Priluki, Soviet Ukraine. So this is uprising against local police brutality, so pretty much the Soviet Lives Matter movement. So once again, we're returning to the small town of Priluki, population about 60,000 people, located in the northern Ukraine. But before we start, I would like to answer a couple of comments and questions that people posted below my first video about this event. The first one is from Zhana Romanchenko. So by her name, I could tell she's probably originally from Ukraine or Russia. This is so stupid to compare the uprising in Priluki to what's going on now in the US. Especially by reading the documents from one side without showing the other side, victim's family, and trying to find out what's really happened there. Actually, militia had beaten to death that man, and burning the militia department was a very right thing to do. People were fighting for their rights. Don't compare USSR militia and US police. They're totally different. I don't know, it's probably can be the whole series of videos comparing Soviet militia and the United States police, but I'm not sure why this lady thinks it's stupid to compare President Priluki and what's going on in the United States. In both cases, police arrested a person got killed while being in custody or died, from heart attack or meningitis, and people got upset, and then we have buildings being destroyed, police stations torched. I see a lot of similarities. I mean, both Soviet militia and American police were created to protect law and order. And actually, Soviet militia was militia just by name. Those were professionals paid by the government to do their job. So militia, it was technically police. At the same time, like local police here, for example, in Michigan, we pay them through property taxes. So it's more like militia, and we elect our sheriff. So we kind of more connected to police than we used to be connected to the local militia back in the Soviet Union. All right, next question. Sounds like people with ties to the old Ukrainian insurgent army. After World War II, they ran an active campaign of attacking KGB, police, and party members and facilities. Having the balls to attack police stations sounds like Ukrainian insurgent army to me. I don't think that's the case. Ukrainian insurgent army, or as they say in Ukrainian, Українська повстанчеська армія, their areas of operation were Volhynia, Polesia, Galicia, so western Ukraine, Carpathian Mountains, Podolia. So most of the areas, they used to be part of the Poland. Then they got occupied by the Soviet Union. They got taken over by Germany, then taken over by Soviet Union again. And they were acting pretty much from 1942 till 1949. Well, they're active, and then here and there till 1956 they were fighting the Soviets. Events were described as 1967. It's in northern Ukraine, so it's nothing to do with UPA. Actually, while searching about this topic, about Priluki, I stumbled upon a witness account. So that's actually not from the police point of view, but from the locals. And the guy mentioned something very interesting. He said there used to be an area in Priluki, in this town, that local people were always having problem with local police. So there was like a Soviet ghetto. But the difference that they historically were people who had their own little businesses. They were like artisans, so people making things, making money, which, illegal in the Soviet Union to produce something on your own and sell. But they were, probably making moonshine, making some equipment, maybe clothing. So they were constantly harassed by police, by militia. So, in Soviet Union, ghetto, it's where police doesn't let you to work. They don't want you to work because it's illegal. So they always had trouble with police, and this killing happened. The guy actually lived in that area, so that's kind of what kind of triggered this whole uprising, because they were fed up with being arrested, harassed, and now it was like, major event that everyone just pretty much got enough of it, and they started creating serious trouble. Okay, so finally back to our KGB report. This is a next report. So first one was dated from October 9. This one is follow-up from the October 10 of 1967. So once again addressed to the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine. A special announcement. On October 8 of this year, in town of Priluki, Chernihiv region, hooligan elements created troubles, беспорядки, I don't know how to translate it more, like troubles, which was reported to, once again, to Communist Party of Ukraine on October 9 in communique number 734H. So that happened October 8. On October 9, so next day, at 10 o'clock in the morning, by the building of Priluki City Department of Militia, slowly started gathering small groups of citizens. By 2 o'clock p.m., they had around 200 people there. And it says, in some periods of time, total crowds were up to 350 to 400 people. That's quite a bit of people, considering how small that town is. Around 10 to 15 people approached the doors of the building and demanded to have the police chief to come out, or like actually to be given to people, as well as the group of the militia officers that arrested on October 1st this late Psycho guy and his cousin Kuzmenko. So they actually, large crowd of people by the police department demanding, let us see the police chief as well as the people who arrested and beat up, I guess, this late citizen Psycho and his cousin. So it definitely sounds like people didn't buy the version that a person passed away because it had meningitis. I mean, if you had a severe bruises probably on your face and body, it definitely tells a different story. It doesn't specify in the document, but that's my guess, because for the second day in a row, hundreds of people gathered by the police department. Then it says here that the first secretary of Communist Party of the local city, the Department of Communist Party, Comrade Marchenko showed up, as well as Comrade Skapenko, who is like procureur, so it's like a judge. So there's some serious party, local party leaders and prosecution leaders came to talk to the people, as well as председатель исполкома. I even don't know how to translate that. So another Comrade Drobot. So they were talking to these folks. So this Soviet apparatchiks explain what happened, the whole substitute of the events, and then they told them that they're going to create a special committee to investigate what happened, and then asked the people to just go back home. So now the government agrees, like, hey, we agree with you, something probably happened that we need to investigate. So some people left, but around from 100 to 150 people remained at the building. So not many people left. So they actually got closer to the building, and some of them continued to demand to let them see the local police chief. Because of that situation, they brought military, they brought Druzhina, KGB workers, and the rest of police, and they were pushing people away from the police building. So quite interesting. So fortunately, there was no shooting, no bloodshed, and Ukrainians generally kind of, I would say, mild people. They're not hot-blooded as maybe Georgians or Armenians or Azerbaijanis. So here they said by 7 p.m. crowd slowly dissipated, and by 9 p.m. on October 9, there was no one left. During initial investigation, they located the police. They figured out 11 people that were like stirring trouble. And also they arrested 11 people from hooligan elements. They were actually creating resistance to the military patrols. All the arrested people were moved, and it says they were moved out from Nezhin, so they arrested them and moved somewhere else. And here's kind of interesting part, because it shows government reaction to this event. So they kind of trying to calm people down while trying to locate who is the main troublemakers and try to arrest them and remove them. In the same time, they removed all the people who were locked up in the local KPZ, so it's a камера предварительного заключения, like initial arrest place, was like a jail cells. So they got them all moved out of town. They became guarding post offices as well as telegraph offices and radio station. So they not screwing around. With participation of the local Soviet Party active members, they began round-the-clock patrol of the streets, especially the area surrounding the police station. And by the end, it's kind of the classic Soviet way. So the local factories, especially, first of all, at the Автотранспортный Park, so there's like a truck outfit where this late psycho worked. So they're gonna organize corresponding explaining work. They call it разъяснительная работа. So that's party leaders and maybe KGB officers gonna show up, have a gatherings, and they're gonna explain workers like, hey, this is what actually happened. There's no reason to be worried about. So that's разъяснительная работа. It's a popular saying, expression in Soviet Union when they're trying to kind of like calm people down and explain them what actually happened. And it says they're gonna continue reporting about how the investigations being carried on. And it's signed by the chief of the KGB of Ukraine, Comrade Nikitchenko. And of course, the described events in Priluki weren't the only uprising in the Soviet Union. In fact, I found out that when Gorbachev came to power, he requested a list of similar events that happened, in 50s and 60s and 70s, so to kind of get idea what is actually going on in the country. And I mean, there's a lot of things were happening, from basic like soldiers that they came from Russia or Ukraine, for example, and they located in maybe Baltic states or somewhere in Asia. They're trying to date local girls. Local guys get upset. Fighting started. Some people get killed. Then, of course, locals getting mad, and of course, it goes out of control. Another event I stumbled upon happened in Nikolaev, southern Ukraine. So that's a big port. So local workers refused to load a ship with grain that was heading to Cuba, because they had a horrible shortage of food in town, and they got very upset that Soviet government is loading ships with grain to send to Cuba while local stores are empty. So they got upset and they refused. So they started a strike in the Soviet Union, refusing to do the job, because why you feeding Cubans when we don't have food for ourselves? Okay, comrades, so this is all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed this video, maybe learned something new. As always, don't forget to like it, share with your friends, and we'll talk to you soon. My name is Sergey, and on this picture, I'm pretending like I'm riding my grandfather's moped called Verkhovina. The picture was taken probably sometime around 1980, when I was about 9 years old. Меня зовут Сергей, я родился в Советском Союзе.
Copyright claims are a capitalist phenomena. It's very clear that the sole purpose of your channel is to slander the USSR in the image of socialism and communism. You do this behind a very believable facade of honesty, but your strong bias is clear to anyone who knows better. You earn off of Soviet curiosity by spreading the most negative portrayal of the USSR. At least have the integrity to show what Russia was before the USSR and what it was given by the revolution. Don't betray your roots so much that you will become a tool of Americans to make stupid crude jokes on the USSR. The Soviets did more to help the struggles of the Third World, of minorities all over the world, than anyone else. Just have some integrity when earning a living from it.
And I want to thank MC Lisha from Finland once again for this wonderful voiceover for Ushanka hate mail. So a while back I recorded the video KGB is watching you, were Soviet people afraid of the Department of State Security? We were explained that back in the 70s and 80s, average Soviet person really wasn't afraid of KGB. I mean, we had a lot of jokes about it, but wasn't as bad as used to be during NKVD time, during the Stalin era. So when I stumbled upon this KGB document from 1976, I thought like, man, maybe we should be afraid of KGB at least a little bit, because those guys were watching over the country, and especially this document is about Ukraine, pretty closely. This document was discovered by Ukrainian historian Eduard Andriushenko, and he's posting some of his finds on his YouTube channel called KGB Files. So as I mentioned earlier, this document dates to July 26, 1976, and it's issued by KGB of Ukraine for the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine. So you could tell who is running the republic. It's not government, it's Communist Party. And there is a red ink stamp says Товарищу Щербицкому ВВ доложено. So Щербицкий was the leader of Communist Party of Ukraine. So he was the leader of Ukraine, and he had this report sent to him too. And this is информационное сообщение. So it's like a information bulletin, tells about major events about July 23, 24, and 25 of 1976. Just the very first lines of this report blew my mind. It basically says, on the territory of Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, as of July 25th, there were 11,420 foreigners from the capitalistic and developing countries. So KGB knew exactly how many foreigners from capitalist and developing countries were on the territory of Ukraine, which is about the size of Texas. Out of these 11,420 foreigners, 17 were diplomats. Out of those 17, 11 were in Kiev, including the helper of the Air Force attaché of the United States Embassy in the Soviet Union, Boley, which came to Kiev on разведывательная поездка. So it was like reconnaissance trip. Also, there were a couple of secretaries, archivists from the United States Embassy in Moscow, Murphy and Cost, that came along with the members of International Congress of Geographers. There were also other members of American Embassy, including Queen Graham, that came to Kiev because of the exhibition called Photography in the United States. I will talk about that exhibition a bit later. There were also several members of Embassy of England, which is kind of interesting. They say Embassy of England, not Great Britain, as well as Canada and Mauritania. Jackson, Dubois, and Kerry. They came to Kiev just to look around. There were also 4 embassy diplomats in Odessa, including Marte Yogan from Austria, Laurent from France, who was traveling back to France, looks like it, so probably took a ship. Also Erix Günther from the Federal Republic of Germany, which came through Odessa, says going into Soviet Union, and as well as First Secretary of Embassy of New Zealand in the USSR, Skoplop, came for vacation into Odessa. And of course, it's safe to assume that at least 1 or 2 KGB agents were following each of those diplomats. So for the 17 diplomats in Ukraine, you had at least a crew of 40-50 KGB agents following every step. There were 2 diplomats in Kharkov, second largest city in Ukraine and a huge industrial area. One of them was advisor for the German embassy in Moscow, Hesse Manfred, and second secretary of the Canadian embassy, Klassen John. And it says разведывательная поездка once again, so another reconnaissance mission in Kharkov. I don't know if I could believe that, but whatever. Next line they mentioned there's members of different delegations, 27 of those, Donetsk 12, Kiev 8, Odessa 3, and Nikopol 4. It's kind of interesting, it's only the largest cities of Ukraine. We had 5,301 tourists in Ukraine during those days. In Kiev 2,331, Odessa 1,365, Lvov is next, 406, Yalta 400, Kharkov 95, Ternopil 87, Zaporozhye 74, and other cities 143. So look at that, they knew exactly where and how many tourists were all over the Ukraine. There were also 211 inno-specialistov, which is like foreign specialists, so the people who came to help install new equipment at the factories or such. We never had conversation about those in the newspapers, any mass media, but we had 211 foreigners working at the factories and so. Dnipropetrovsk region 36, Dnipropetrovsk huge industrial area, Kharkov region 35, another industrial area, Warszawa область 34, Lvovskaya 18, Donetskaya 16, Khersonskaya 15, Odessa again 13, and other regions 44. So quite a few foreigners helping in the factories and stuff, but as I said, we never heard of that. KGB also tracked all the foreign students, total of 2,774, as well as people that arrived for the private business, 704 people. And once again, the list, every region, how many people in the Donetsk region and Kharkiv region, and even 30 people were visiting in Chernihiv region, where my grandparents are originally from. Also, there were 1,174 people of other categories, whatever could be the categories, but as I said, you could tell that the guys were keeping a really close count on everyone who came from the capitalist or developed country in Ukraine. The KGB also knew that in Odessa and Kherson seaports, those the largest ports in Ukraine, of course they also had Sevastopol, but there was a Soviet Navy military base, and they had, of course, no foreign ships in that port. So in Odessa and Kherson seaports, there were 25 ships from capitalistic and developing countries, and the total amount of seamen, sailors, was 1,212. And the following statistics kind of interesting because you can guess what ships brought based on their country of origin. So they had 6 ships from the United States. That's a lot. And total of 220 sailors. I would assume they brought probably grain. 5 were from India. India were buying tea, a lot of it, so cotton, so that's probably products from India. 5 were from Greece. No idea what we were buying from Greece back then. 2 from England, 1 from Portugal, 1 from Holland, 1 from Liberia, 1 from Sweden, 1 from Federal Republic of Germany, 1 from Algeria, and 1 from France. What I find extremely curious here that the most amount of ships in Ukrainian ports, 6, were from the United States of America. So it's 1976, we're at kind of at the height of the Cold War. At the same time, they were the biggest trading partner of Ukrainian Soviet Social Republic, even bigger one than who was on place number 2 is India with 5 ships. And these reports also mentioned that on the territory of Ukraine there were also 21,501 citizens of the socialist countries. So we're talking East Germany, Bulgaria, Hungary, and so on. Out of them, 2,767 were students and other type of educational type of people. So 21,500, that's a lot. Page 3 is extremely interesting. Here they're talking about the situation at the 21st Olympic Games in Montreal, Canada. So despite that the report is about situation in Ukraine, there is a report about Olympic Games in Canada. So here we have a Ukrainian section of KGB sharing the information they got from the central office of KGB that reports to the Council of Ministers of Soviet Union. So according to the information, situation around Soviet sport delegation and journalists from the Soviet Union at the Olympics in general is normal. At the same time, there was noted some activization of hostile and, first of all, nationalistic elements. You need to remember, of course, in Canada there are a lot of Ukrainians that had moved even before World War I, after World War I, and a lot of them also moved after World War II. So there was a lot of Ukrainian nationalists living in Canada. So they were showing some hostile attitude towards the Soviet sport delegation. So a report continues. Ukrainian nationalists during the competition for soccer and volleyball, where the Soviet teams were participating, they were displaying nationalistic flags, which is blue and yellow, which is now it became a national flag of Ukraine. It used to be nationalistic, now it's national. And also they were yelling anti-Soviet slogans. The KGB report continues that in Olympic Village, as well as in the places of the competition, these anti-Soviet immigrants and other people are attempting to враждебная обработка наших спортсменов. I don't know how to translate it. So it's like they were talking anti-Soviet stuff to our sports people. And quite often there were noticed cases of spreading around anti-Soviet literature, probably Archipelago Gulag books and other books. So KGB was watching and being concerned about that anti-Soviet. It's like almost like hostile treatment of our sportsmen. And now KGB is talking about tourists from the United States because they provide this background of chauvinistic rage, because that's what they have going on from the sports fan from the United States. Besides crazy support of American sportsmen, they also demonstrate as a provocation support to gymnastic ladies from Romania, as well as Japanese gymnasts and sportsmen from other countries. Whoever played against the Soviets, Americans were supporting them like crazy, as long as it will help Americans to take gold. So it's kind of interesting. So that was total chauvinistic rage from the Americans. Okay, now we're turning back to the Soviet Ukraine, the city of Cherkasy, and the report about reconnaissance mission of American diplomats. So in July 21st and 23rd, in city of Cherkasy, there were two professional kadrovые разведчики, professional spies, helpers of the military attaché of American embassy in Moscow, Williams and England, and they made a visual разведка, reconnaissance of the military and industrial facilities, walked around the perimeter of the military войсковая часть, so like a military facility. So that the military installation was actually Tankovaya Divizia, tank division number 43128. We never called the military bases. There was just like, there'll be fence and the guards, and there'll be this military outfit located there permanently. Like we had those right in the middle of Kiev. So this report continues that those American diplomats were peeking through the fences, twice attempted to walk closely to the park of the military vehicles. So they were curious at the tanks. And they said that while doing this reconnaissance mission, diplomats were acting really rudely and in open. So they weren't like hiding like in movies in the middle of the night trying to sneak in. They would just walk right to the fence and trying to see what's going on. Now goes interesting part. So definitely they've been followed by KGB agents, but since they technically probably didn't break the law, they don't want to do anything. So it says в целях пресечения сбора военной информации, with the purpose of stopping these guys gathering military intelligence, Williams and England were stopped by the military patrol 30 meters away from the entry to this military facility. So you could walk around that place, no issues, like we did all the time, but since they knew these guys are Americans, so KGB called the military outfit, so they sent military patrol, and they stopped them under like, okay, show me your ID, show me your Ausweis. So after being stopped, the diplomats were told that they do something they're not supposed to do, and after that, I guess they called local оперработник особого отдела КГБ, so the special department of KGB representative, and witnesses. They wrote down act, so about this stopping the people. So Americans didn't refuse all this претензии, can say it how to say it in English, so it's like whatever they were blamed of doing, but they refused to sign this paperwork, and the information about reconnaissance mission of Williams in England was transferred to the central office of KGB in Moscow. Okay, so we're gonna stop right here, and I'm gonna make a part 2 of this quite interesting 1976 KGB report. If you guys have any questions, please post below this video. Don't forget to like it and subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon. Just a friendly reminder that my book American Diaries is available on Amazon.com, or shoot me an email if you would like to have a signed copy. Thank you. So today we're going to take a look at another unclassified document from the KGB archives in Ukraine. This one was unclassified in 2013, and it says on the top, "Netaemno," not secret, but it used to be "Совершенно секретно," so that's close to like top secret. Great, and it's dating back to 1935. Warning: the events described in this report are quite horrible and graphic, so I'm just warning you that you may not want to watch this video till the end. So this document, which they call it "Специальное сообщение," special communique, special message, was signed by Zinovy Katznelson. He was the second in command of Ukrainian NKVD. So this before KGB, they call it NKVD, Commissariat внутренних дел, so Commissariat of the Inner Business or something like that. So внутренние дела. So this document dated from August of 1935, and Zinovy Katznelson, he's a quite an interesting character. So at that time he was second in command in NKVD of Ukraine. Prior to that, he had a bunch of other important positions, and I will post the link below this video for all the guys that are involved in this report. But Comrade Katznelson, he was kind of like this old guard, one of those communists and Bolsheviks that were wiped out later by Stalin. So after his position of NKVD of Ukraine, he actually moved to Moscow in 1937, 2 years later. He was second in command of Gulag system. So Gulag is the state management of camps. It's a государственное управление of camps, pretty much you can translate it. State management of camps, Gulag. He was second in command in 1937. A year later, in March of 1938, he was shot, and once again he was a Trotskyist or some anti-Soviet propaganda or whatever for different reasons, but he got eliminated in 1938. But now we're talking its events of 1935. So this top secret report was sent to Central Committee of Communist Party of Ukraine, to comrades Stanislav Kasior. Stanislav Kasior was another quite interesting comrade. He was Polish by his nationality, but he was in charge of Ukraine, as you see. He was running collectivization in Ukraine in early 30s, so he was somewhat responsible for so-called Golodomor in Ukraine in 1932 till 1933, when there's a wild difference in estimates, so between 2 to 8 million Ukrainians and Russian peasants perished in Ukraine during collectivization. So in 1935, he's still top dog on Communist Party of Ukraine, but in 1938 he will be arrested and shot a year later, in 1939, for Polish participating in Polish counter-revolution terrorist organization. So because he was Polish, that's what brought against him. He was secret member or leader of the Polish counter-revolution organization in Ukraine, and he got shot in 1939. The second person this document addressed to is Pavel Postyshev. So he was also a top leader of the Central Committee of Communist Party of Ukraine. And he later got arrested in 1938, surprise, surprise. So just 3 years from now, he also will get in trouble. And at that time, there was so-called struggle against nationalist deviation. I hope I said the word correctly. So when you deviate from the course, so Comrade Stalin had concerns that Ukrainian communists are becoming too nationalist. So they purged the whole Communist Party of Ukraine. Around 100,000 members of Communist Party of Ukraine were prosecuted. One of them was Pavel Postyshev. And it's kind of an irony that he was always fighting Trotsky's movement hardcore, like he was anti-Trotsky person. And when he got arrested in 1938, he got accused of being a Trotskyist, and he got shot a year later in 1939, just like his friend Stanislav Kasior. Kind of interesting, almost cute detail about Pavel Postashev. He was the guy who came up with the idea to celebrate New Year in the Soviet Union instead of Christmas, because Christmas was a religious holiday. So he actually wrote the letter and kind of introduced this idea, how about we outlaw celebrating Christmas and we'll start celebrating New Year. And he came up with the idea in the same year as this document, in 1935. Okay, so after this super long and boring introduction, now let's dig into this document. What was this super secret information that was sent to the leaders of the Communist Party of Ukraine? So this report describes events happened in a Ukrainian town of Krivorozhye. Several workers from the local brick factory were walking by the cemetery, and they noticed two men that were tossing children's bodies into the grave. And the scary part that they specified, those bodies were badly damaged by rats. So workers actually went in there and they grabbed these unknown people, and it turned out that they were watchmen of the local Детский дом. So this is like orphanage house where they keep abandoned kids. So local militia and NKVD maybe got involved, and this is what they found out. So two children died in a local foster home. One was 14 days old and one was 3.5 months old, so babies. A caregiver who was on duty that night, Comrade Ginsburg, didn't let anyone know about it and just tossed the bodies into the cellar. And in the morning she offered the watchmen, Garsyuta and Raganov, to take bodies to the local cemetery and bury it there. And by the morning, bodies were badly damaged by rats. Further investigation revealed they started questioning workers of that foster home, and they discovered that such cases happened earlier, that in July of the same year, the same way they buried 18 children of the different ages. Usually doctors never inspected dead children, and only after several days they would make some kind of record in their book. They kept some kind of book about children they had in that foster home. So that was all kind of like part of like, yeah, whatever, I have some more children died, not a big deal. The local NKVD office arrested a manager of the foster home, Radzinskaya, so it's a female, then arrested that person on duty, Ginsburg, as well as one of the watchmen, Garsyuta. Second guy managed to escape, and they were looking for him. Then they said they continued their investigation. They recovered children's bodies and sent them for medical evaluation to figure out what happened. So as you see, it's quite a horrifying report, and you can just imagine what was going on in other foster homes all over the country, because we're talking here Ukraine, and Ukraine used to be a breadbasket of the Soviet Union. So definitely have some serious problems. I mean, no one cares about these children. They're just being tossed. The bodies were tossed in a cellar and then quietly buried in a cemetery. No reports filed. Unfortunately, there's no additional documents covering this topic. My guess would be there was still a horrible shortage of food in Ukraine. I won't be surprised if the workers of this foster home were stealing food to feed their own families. So these young children were underfed. In case, babies, maybe there were cases when young mothers would just, drop off the baby on the steps of this foster home, and they had no milk and no food to provide, so they just let children die. Because it sounded like it was a normal occurrence just to send watchmen with the dead bodies to the local cemetery, just toss them in the grave, cover it up, and no one knows about it. So for all those tankies out there, this is 1935, the great era of building socialism in the Soviet Union. Soviet government was spending millions building new tank factories and stuff like that, and here we have children dying, being eaten by rats, and quietly buried in the local cemeteries. Alright, on this somber note, we're gonna finish this video. I hope you guys learned something new. As always, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and we'll talk to you soon. My name is Sergey, and I know just a little bit about life in the Soviet Union. Меня зовут Сергей, я немного знаю про жизнь в Советском Союзе. So today we're gonna travel all over the largest country in the world, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republic, USSR. And while we're gonna explore the cities and towns of the beautiful Soviet Union, we're also gonna talk about riots and uprising in the USSR. Remember this guy? Yes, this is Mikhail Gorbachev, the first and the last president of the Soviet Union. So in March of 1988, Gorbachev got interested in the history of the uprisings and riots in his country, so he requested a special report. And he got one. It was called «Справка КГБ СССР о массовых беспорядках с 1957 года». KGB of the USSR report about mass riots since 1957. Many people who participated in such riots were punished according to the criminal code of the Soviet Union, primarily Articles 70 and 190. Which covered anti-Soviet propaganda, and Article 190 covered spreading lies about the USSR, burning a Soviet flag or doing other stuff to the flag, and organizing mass meetings. So Article 70 was mostly about агитация и пропаганда, подрыв и ослабление советской власти, распространение клеветы. So anti-Soviet propaganda, actions to weaken Soviet power, and stuff like that. Punishment for such activities, jail time from 6 months up to 7 years, or being sent to exile, usually to Siberia, from 2 to 5 years. Article 190 of the Criminal Code was quite similar, mostly spreading lies about the USSR. And the punishment was jail up to 3 years, forced labor camps up to 2 years, or fines from 300 rubles and up. Okay, so now we are ready to explore Soviet hotspots and look at the different mass riots happening from 1957 till 1987. Our first stop is industrial city of Podolsk, Moscow region. Population around 200,000 people. Fun fact, Podolsk was the town where German company Zinger opened its factory manufacturing sewing machines that later was renamed as Подольский фабрика по производству швейных машин. In June of 1957, for about 2 days, there were massive riots with 3,000 people participating. KGB claims that riots started by the drunken citizens because of the rumors that local militia killed arrested driver. Kind of similar situation that we recently discussed in Priluki, Ukraine. From Podolsk, we're gonna travel down south to the southern Russia, city of Krasnodar, population around 900,000 people. On January 15, 1961, crowds around 1,300 people were acting like hooligans because of the rumors that a military person was arrested and beat up because he wasn't wearing his uniform properly. It got ugly. One person got killed. There was some shooting involved, and 24 people were convicted. From southern Russia, Krasnodar, we're gonna travel to town of Biysk, Altai region, so that's Siberia. June 21st, 1961, in Biysk there were mass riots, around 500 people, protecting a drunk person that police was attempting to arrest at the Central Market. That person was refusing to get arrested, started fighting, using weapons. One person got killed, one person got injured, 15 people were arrested and convicted. From the distant Biysk, let's fly back to the town of Murom, Vladimir region, Central Russia. Murom is one of the oldest cities in Russia. It used to be an important trading post. It's almost 1200 years old. It's a historical city with population around 120,000 people. So in the same month of June 1961, over 1,500 workers from the local factory almost destroyed the local, and it's called Med Vytrizvitelь, so that's the place when they bring drunk people. So one of the workers was brought there by police and he died there. So the workers got upset, stormed that building, police was shooting, 2 people got wounded, 12 people got arrested. Our next stop gonna be the city of Alexandrov, Vladimirsky region. It's about 120 kilometers from Moscow. Population somewhere around 60,000 people. So we're still in the summer of 1961. So this is July 23rd. Around 1,200 people went on the streets and marched towards the local police department to help 2 their arrested comrades. Police used weapons. 4 people got killed, 11 got wounded, 20 people got arrested and convicted. From the central Russia, we're gonna fly to Northern Ossetia Republic, town of Beslan, population around 30,000 people. Beslan got famous, well, ill-famous, quite a few years ago when the school was taken by terrorists and a lot of children got killed. So events there happened in September of 1961 for 2 days. So it looks like 1961 was a pretty ugly year in the Soviet Union. So around 700 people started riots. It happened because of an unsuccessful attempt of the local police to arrest 2 drunken people that were hanging out. People refused to get arrested and actually they had weapons, probably knives. 1 person got killed, 7 people got convicted. From Beslan, we're gonna fly to Rostov region, town of Novocherkassk, which is a cultural capital of Don region Cossacks, population around 170,000 people. So here we're talking about that most well-known Soviet uprising in July 1962. Around 4,000 workers from the local factory were extremely upset because retail prices for meat and butter went up, pay went down. So there was those Khrushchev reforms. Troops were used. 23 people got killed, around 70 got wounded, 132 people got arrested and convicted. That's so-called Novocherkasskaya Vostanie, Novocherkask's uprising. From Novocherkassk, we're going now to Ukraine, Dnipropetrovsk region, the city of Kryvyi Rog, which is a large industrial city, 650,000 people population. It has a lot of iron ore mining and metallurgical factories. Events occur on June 1963 for about 3 days. Riots, about 600 people participating. It's all started with police trying to arrest a drunk soldier who refused to get arrested. And it started from there. 4 people killed, 15 wounded, 41 arrested and convicted. So you see a lot of this is police attempting to arrest drunk citizens or drunk soldiers who went on leave. From Kryvyi Rog, Ukraine, now we jump into Azerbaijan Republic, town of Sumgait, which is the 3rd largest city in Azerbaijan. It's around 30 kilometers from Baku, population about 250,000 people. I actually had a chance to visit Sumgait way back in like 1987 when there was the group of kids. We stayed in Baku and then we traveled around. But anyways, here we're talking about events of November 7, 1963. So this was something different. So November 7th, that's usually when we have a demonstration for the October Revolution. So around 800 people started the riots defending the demonstrators. They were carrying pictures of Stalin. So that's interesting. So instead of carrying pictures of Comrade Khrushchev and Lenin and Marx, they were carrying pictures of Stalin. So militia and their helpers were trying to take away the portraits. So other people got upset. Around 800 people got involved. Weapons were used. 1 person was wounded. 6 got arrested and convicted. From the beautiful Republic of Azerbaijan, former oil capital of Russia, now we're flying back to Moscow region, town of Broniцы. It's about 50 kilometers from Moscow, population about 20,000 people. So what happened in Broniцы? On April 16, 1964, around 300 people stormed local police department, which also had cells where they kept arrested people. So local citizen died from after being beat up by local police. People got upset. There was no weapons used. No one got killed, but 8 people got arrested and convicted. So once again, we got drunk arrest. Police show some brutality, and locals get upset. Okay, comrades, so we're about halfway through the list of mass riots that happened in Soviet Union between 1957 and 1987. We're gonna take a break here, so if you have any questions, please post below this video. Don't forget to put likes, and we'll talk to you soon. Today we're gonna take a look at another unclassified KGB document from 1981. If you remember anything about Soviet history, you should know that in 1981, the leader of the Soviet Union was Leonid Brezhnev, and the leader of the Soviet KGB was Yuri Andropov. So it's quite possible that Yuri Andropov dropped off this document personally on the desk of Leonid Brezhnev. So this document is titled Results of the Search for the Authors of Anti-Soviet Anonymous Materials, so-called Anonimное письмо or Anonimka. Okay, so now it's time for the short lesson of Russian or even Soviet language. Урок русского советского языка. Анонимка. Анонимка. That's kind of like a street word for анонимное письмо. Анонимное письмо. Anonymous letter. So that was quite a popular thing in Soviet Union when you want to report on your neighbors or your co-workers, but you don't want yourself being exposed. You just write анонимное письмо or анонимка, and you'll report whatever the behavior that you find suspicious. And that was a popular way of reporting on other people, as well as, in this case, анонимное письма, that's anti-Soviet letters that people will write or type, and then they spread them around without, of course, mentioning their own name. So let's find out why KGB was so concerned about the silly anonymous letters, анонимки. So these reports begin with Комитет государственной безопасности и его местные отделы, Committee of the State Security and its local units, in 1981 perform a specific job. My translation sometimes is kind of rough, but they specifically worked on this problem of exposing or unmasking of authors and distributors of the anti-Soviet anonymous materials. They also work on prevention and suppression of their anti-social activities. During the previous year, in our country, there were 1,963, I'll call them creators, authors, which distributed 22,502 anonymous materials, those anonymous letters, of anti-Soviet, nationalist, and politically damaging content. So out of those 22,502 letters, 17,440 were leaflets, listovki, and 5,062 were letters. So the difference, leaflets is the one you glue on the walls in public places, and letters you just mail it to authorities or other people. Also, it was discovered 604 graffiti style messages, also anti-Soviet messages. So as you see, KGB was really detailed in particular. So we know that there were 604 graffiti style anti-Soviet messages discovered in Soviet Union back in 1981. To be noted, the majority of distributed anti-Soviet materials were produced using different, they call it tricks, trick methods. Some of them using typografsky schrift, which is printing press letters, so people would steal those letters from the places when they print books and stuff or newspapers, and then they manufacture those leaflets. They use typewriters, homemade patterns, so you cut the pattern, then you kind of spray paint it to make the leaflet. photocopying devices, which were quite rare in 1981 in Soviet Union, and in some cases electrograph equipment. I'm not sure what they're talking about here, but all kind of equipment. So people had to have access to mass produce that anti-Soviet damaging leaflets. And here's the interesting geographical reference. Most frequently, distribution of anonymous materials, anonymki, was registered in Ukraine, Belarus. So I was surprised. I thought it would be Baltic states would be in the first place, but Ukraine, Belarus, Estonia, Moldavia, Stavropol and Krasnodar regions, so that's southern Russia, Kuibyshev, it's Siberia, Yaroslav, Omsk, and Tula regions. So all over the place, but on the first place was Ukraine. Very proud of it. Comparing with 1980, so the previous year, an amount of the anonymous writers that showed up in 1981 dropped by 290 people, but the quantity of produced and distributed anti-Soviet and false materials, mostly leaflets, went up by 8,863 pieces. So less people were publishing, but they become more productive. And considering the total amount was 22,000, increase in 8,000 pieces, that's a huge jump. The KGB identified a total of 1,351 creators, including 18 people that produced hostile documents with the terrorist intentions or expressions towards the leaders of the Communist Party and the Soviet government, and 72 expressing threats of physical violence towards local representatives of party and the government. Next part is quite interesting. Out of all discovered creators, so a lot of them didn't get busted, but out of the one that's discovered, and if you remember, we like the heroes that don't get caught. 26.7% were white-collar workers, so almost 30% were служащие. 23.4% blue-collar workers, so it looks like almost equal amount of blue-collar and white-collar weren't happy with the Soviet system. And interesting, it says mostly unqualified labor, so like manual labor workers were unhappy. 17% college and high school students, 14.9% retirees, 3.1% kolkhoznik workers, and 14.8%, this is really funny, лица без определенных занятий. It's people without a particular employment, or people in jail. So we had this category of people that kind of worked, kind of didn't. So they were без определенных занятий, without specific work. They worked enough to not get arrested, to be parasite of society, but they were just like bouncing here and there and didn't have a specific place of work. I find these statistics quite interesting because it looks like people who weren't happy with the Soviet system were spread quite equally all over the place. You have about 25% white-collar workers, 25% blue-collar workers, 17% college and high school, probably mostly college, even retirees. Then some people claim that they were very happy without their retirement. Soviet Union, 15%. And even people that, well, I would assume the most people who weren't happy about Soviet Union will be лица без определенных занятий, people without particular employment. But as you see, actually people who worked full-time and had a decent jobs, like white-collar workers, they were in majority. So out of those 1,350 arrested creators, 123 comrades were members of the Communist Party. So close to 10% were members of Communist Party or candidates to the party membership. So it was quite a process to become a member of Communist Party. I mean, you can be mentally communist, but not every communist was member of the Communist Party. It's like every prune is a plum, but not every plum is a prune. So first you become a candidate, you prove that you're worthy, and then they accept you to the party. And also 157 were Komsomol members, so that's a young communists. So as you see, out of all arrested people, 20% were members of Young Communist Party or candidates to the Communist Party, like adult Communist Party. And it's getting even better. So KGB wasn't just busy chasing and arresting these creators. They also tried to analyze. So here it says the analysis of the reasons and motivations of these anti-Soviet and false accusation materials showed that such antisocial actions were influenced by ideological diversions of the enemy, which means enemy radio voices, Radio Freedom, Radio Free Europe, American radios, BBC, in part of hostile radio programming about the events in Poland and actions of Solidarność Labor Union. So 1981, that was the big troubles were brewing in Poland, if you remember, and big part of it was the workers at the Solidarność Labor Union. So that was the ones that make boats in Gdynia, I believe. So Lech Walensky, famous leader and the first president of independent Poland after events. So that was interesting. So the main reason they said was those enemy voices. That's why they were so jammed back in the Soviet days. So that was the main reason, is ideological influence of enemy voices. Second reason was due to political immaturity, политическая незрелость. So you are just politically not worked out well, so you can accept different ideas. So it's 504 people were part of the political maturity. I think, people try to come up with any excuse. Well, I just was stupid. Okay, so we'll call it political immaturity. Reason number 3, due to the hooligan motives and greedy reasons. 230 people. So maybe someone was pissed at the local party leader just for the greedy reasons, like he got apartment and I'm supposed to get, or something like that. Number 4, and that's really interesting, due to the mental sickness, 229 people. And once again, if you remember, quite a few Soviet dissidents end up into the mental facilities, like we call them durdom. They were just being forced to stay there. He's not anti-Soviet, he's just plain crazy. So 229 people on that. Reason number 5, due to the shortages of food supplies for the population, 49 people. So they got pissed because there was not enough groceries in the stores, and it pushed them to this wrong path of anti-Soviet activities. So as you see, KGB had quite an impressive breaking down, because number 6 reason is a nationalist sentiment, 29 people. Number 7, hostile attitude, 21. And number 8, due to improper actions of authorities and personal grudges, 21 persons. So improper actions of authorities, that could be just on a personal level. Maybe somebody was expecting some bonus at work and he didn't get it because he said something. Or maybe, something about the guy was sleeping with the worker's wife and he was a communist leader that pissed the worker off. So could be a lot of reasons. And also 264 creators were still under investigation for their motives. So quite a few people were still sitting in the KGB cell, and they tried to figure out why the heck did you go full anti-Soviet. So let's take a look what kind of punishment KGB provided for such anti-Soviet propaganda. After the proper verifications checks, the total of 661 creators were subjected to, it's hard to translate, it's called меры предупредительно-профилактического воздействия. So it's measurements of preventive prophylactic impact. So that's pretty much like no, if we catch you one more time you'll be in trouble. And maybe I'm not sure what else they could do, but it's pretty much they got like a stern warning from KGB. So 661 did that, so they kind of get off the hook pretty easy. 405 were still checked and investigated. 229 they were having mental issues and they were sent for treatment. So that's interesting part. And 20 will continue serving their prison sentence. So I guess they were in prison and they were just doing maybe graffiti on the walls and they got in trouble. 36 people that willingly chose to make and distribute the anti-Soviet materials as a form of hostile anti-socialist activity were prosecuted according to the Articles 70 and 190 of the Criminal Code of the Soviet Union. Okay, so what they're talking about here, Article 70, it's about anti-Soviet campaigning and propaganda, and it has prison terms from 6 months to 7 years with following exile from 2 to 5 years. So that's Article 70, anti-Soviet campaigning and propaganda. Article 190 of the Criminal Code is for spreading false information against the Soviet government. So that was a little bit lighter, let's say, article. You can get a prison term up to 3 years instead of 7, labor camp up to 2 years, or you can get fined up to 300 rubles. And this curious document ends with a quite interesting promise by KGB that KGB is taking measurements towards increasing its effectiveness in finding creators and distributors of the anti-Soviet and false anonymous materials. Signed by Yuri Andropov. Dropping off the mic. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, maybe learned something new. As always, don't forget to like it, share with your friends, and we'll talk to you soon.
My name is Sergey, and almost 50 years ago I was born in the USSR. Меня зовут Сергей, и я родился в Советском Союзе. This document was discovered by Ukrainian historian Eduard Andriushenko. I'll post link to his Facebook page below this video. So today we're going to review another KGB document dated of October of 1967. 1967 was a very important year in the history of the Soviet Union, and you're going to tell me why. And if your answer was, of course, 1967 minus 1917, yay! 50th year anniversary of the Great October Revolution, Великой Октябрьской революции. So of course, Soviet government was celebrating, Communist Party of the Soviet Union was celebrating, but what about regular people? And that's where we come to this interesting KGB of Ukraine report, as I said, from the October 24th of 1967, which was declassified in 2013. Before it was secret, not top secret, just secret. So this document is addressed to the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine, and it's signed by Vitaly Nikitchenko, the chairman of Ukrainian KGB. I looked him up, and surprisingly, there's not much information about Vitaly Nikitchenko, not many photos. He was born in 1908, so he was 1 year younger than my grandfather. And he passed away in 1992. He had a long, productive Soviet life. He was a chairman of the Ukrainian KGB from 1954 all the way till 1970. He got a degree which totally not related to KGB. He finished the Ukrainian State University, Railway College, pretty much. He became involved with the Communist Party in 1944. And he got into his position of the chairman of Ukrainian KGB in 1954. So 10 years later, so this is right the time when Khrushchev got rid of Beria after death of the Stalin, and he was replacing all the Beria people around the country. So Vitaly Nikitchenko was in the right place in the right time, and he took that position, and looks like he rolled through the replacement of Khrushchev by Brezhnev successfully and remained at power in Ukraine all the way till 1970, 1 year before I was born. So this document starts with quite interesting expression and says that KGB of Ukrainian Soviet Social Republic continue receiving signals. That's another word, signals, not actually radio signals, but that's how they say. So if somebody reports, so they send a signal about hostile and unhealthy
talks and expressions from specific anti-Soviet elements in congestion with preparedness and celebrations of 50 years of the Soviet power, Soviet government. And what follows is the list of examples of different activities or people who were saying stuff that got reported to KGB, and also what KGB did about that. The first example is kind of interesting. So there's Comrade Romanov, born in 1936, and as you notice, it's constantly will be mentioned year of birth of these people. So born in 1936 and lives in the town of Cherkasy, which is Ukraine. He reported that a person named Anatoly, who just came back from prison, it actually doesn't specify it's a prison, it just says места заключения, so it's kind of place when he was spent his time. So he lived in the village Moshny, and he invited him to celebrate the 50th anniversary of October. That's how we call it, anniversary of October. And he said that they created some kind of group of our people, and we need more our people. And if needed, we can go for the forest, go into the forest, and we got plenty of weapons, so no need to worry. So it says KGB started to figure out, trying to find out who is this Anatoly person, and possibly try to stop him from doing any hostile activities. Next story, that according to report from the welder, Demchenko Boris, he was welder at the Kharkovsky tractor factory, born in 1929, not a party member. There's another thing, беспартийный. So according to his report, a group of workers and about 18 people, they lived in barracks. There's your free Soviet housing, living in the barracks of this factory at the village called Novozapadny. We're planning to have a demonstration on November 7th, that's when we celebrate October, but since the dates changed, it's actually in November. Revolution happened on October 7, 1917. By old calendar, new calendar is November 7. So they were planning to have a demonstration with banners, "We demand improvement of our housing conditions." So here you go, the group of 18 workers live in barracks, want to have a demonstration, and it says the KGB is working to stop, to prevent that demonstration. This next report is totally amazing. So, dental doctor, that's the one they call him, zubной врач, so actually tooth doctor, if you translate word for word, from town of Chernovtsi, so that's western Ukraine, Katsap Izya Moiseyevich, born in 1934. So what's interesting, Izya Moiseyevich, so that automatically tells you that he's Jewish person. Israel, Izya is a short term for Israel, but his last name, Katsap, it kills me because this is what the Ukrainians call Russians. It's kind of like a derogatory term. So Russians call Ukrainians Chachol, and we call Russians Katsap. So it's kind of similar how some people here in America call Polish people Polaks. You're a Polak, so Ukrainians say you're a Katsap to Russian guy. But this is a Jewish person with the last name Katsap. So check this out. So during Israel aggression, he expressed his unhappiness with policy of the Soviet government at the Ближний Восток, can't think of the word, but anyway, in that area, right? Israel and Palestine. And he told his co-workers that he was planning to set himself on fire on November 7 this year if he won't receive an apartment. So let's pause and think for a second. So Jewish dentist is planning to set himself on fire if he won't receive an apartment. So sounds like his housing conditions are horrible as well, probably live in a tiny room in a barrack. So this is the Soviet reality. Jewish dentist in America. I never heard that any Jewish dentists were setting themselves on fire because they couldn't get an apartment. In Soviet Union, Jewish dentists are so desperate to get some kind of housing, they're ready to burn themselves alive. So this is kind of quite interesting expression of unsatisfaction with his life conditions. But of course, it's getting better and better. So next report is 2 workers of Совхоз Овощной. So remember we talked about collective farms in the Soviet Union? That's a kolkhoz. Sovkhoz, it's like a Soviet farm. So there you don't own anything, you just work. So this is kind of that type. So it's a vegetable. Name of the this совхоз is vegetable, овощной. And it's a поселок, so it's a small town or village Komarovka in Kherson region. So this couple, Sushkins, both born in 1925, they were like promising physical punishment to the local administration. Actually, the lady said that can't wait for this 50-year celebration, hope the war will start so I can gut these bosses, so like выпустить кишки, so let their guts out. I won't leave this place until I cut their stomachs open. And it says the KGB взяты на проверку, so KGB is checking them out, what's going on. Next report is from Poltava region of Ukraine, Mirgorod County, район. So the local citizens Щукин, Listopadny, Grishko, and Dubina expressed some threats of violence against local communists when the KGB called them for a conversation. They call it вызвали на беседу. So it's you get called in and they chat with you like, hey, what's up? They repented in their actions and they wrote confessions and promise that they will never do it again. Next incident from Chernovitsky region, so that's western Ukraine. So 2 brothers, Sergei and Vladimir, one of them was a worker of Mezh Kolkhoz Troy, so that's some kind of construction company that specialized in collective farms buildings. So they got mad, looks like that their wives got fired. So they threatened the local collective farm director that he'll get physically punished. So they told him they're going to beat him up for firing their wives. So that case was transferred to local militia, local police for investigation. Next report came from Kharkov region, the city of Zmiev. So there was some kind of машиностроительный завод, so some kind of equipment building factory. And in their department, when they painted the cars or trucks with nitro paint, because they didn't have a good ventilation and large volumes of like choking gases, удушливые газы. So there was really like unhealthy conditions. So many workers were quitting jobs. So one of the workers, Nestertsov, offered that the whole department will stop working and express in that way they're going to express their protest against the administration of that factory. So we're talking about going on strike in the Soviet Union. So workers going against their administration. And looks like KGB got involved, and they said they took some measures and situation was normalized. And one more story for this video. Looks like I'll have to do it in 2 installments. There's quite a bit to tell, but this one is amazing because this is a perfect example for the Soviet sarcasm. You know, like a lot of people say Soviet humor is very dark. So this is a classic example of that. So this incident happened in Dnipropetrovsk. Right now it's called Kropivnitsky, I believe. So that's the center of the heavy industry of Ukraine. So the helper of the steel maker, so they have a Martenovsky cech, so that's when they make steel. So Belitsky Grigory Hicks said the following: they should be preparing for this 50th anniversary for 50 years, not for 1 year, because you can't prepare in 1 year. You can't be ready because right now they started slow down supplying stores with products and keep them at the warehouses because they want to put them all out for sale during the holidays so people will enjoy, easy access to hard to get goods. But it's not going to be a holiday. It's just going to be crazy running around trying to snatch those items. So it looks like it's a classic example of Soviet retail. They're like, okay, let's stop selling some goods that are in high demand, keep them in the warehouses, and then when the actual holiday comes, November 7th, then we'll put them all out and people will be so happy because there'll be so much in the stores. It's crazy, man. It's just plain Soviet crazy. So we're gonna come back to this document in my next video. There's some even more amazing stuff about rumors that China gonna attack Soviet Union right at the 50th anniversary celebration in order to make those holidays not real holiday. So there's some good stuff coming up. But we're gonna stop for right now. I hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you soon. My name is Sergey, and I was born in the USSR.
If you're interested in the Soviet Union, I highly recommend a channel called Ushanka Show, which is a YouTube show about a guy who lived in the Soviet Union and then moved to America. He talks about life, what life was like under the Soviet Union, and it's very fascinating. So
today we're gonna talk about forced child labor in the Soviet Union. But before we dive into this topic, we need to take a look at one very interesting KGB document dated back to 1983. This document was discovered by Ukrainian historian Eduard Andriushenko. I'll post link to his Facebook page below this video. The title of the document is About Children's Poisoning, Zaporozhye region. On June 21st, 1983, 51 students, 7th to 9th grade, from the schools number 37, 50, and 74 from the city of Zaporozhye were hospitalized with the signs of poisoning, symptoms of poisoning. And then there's the side mark that they were harvesting carrots in Sovkhoz, Komintern, Zaporozhye region, total of 176 children. So almost a third of them got sick and got into the hospital. 11 children were placed into the ER, so they were in a pretty bad shape, reanimatsiya, I call it in Russian. The health condition of the rest is satisfactory. Remaining children were removed from the field work and placed in a camp and being supervised by medical personnel. Supposedly, children got poisoned by the fumes of chemicals, chlorophos and phazalon, that the field next to the carrot field was treated on June 16, so 5 days prior. Situation at the incident site as well as the place of living of the sick children is normal and being controlled by the local KGB. So as you see, there is a lot of information here to swallow and to digest. So how we gonna eat this, Soviet bear? You got that right. One bite at a time. Such documents that were secret and classified for so many years, a great reminder to all the people that were called Sovkadrochery, people that lived in the Soviet Union and thought it was so amazing and so great and they wanted to return it as soon as possible. So let's dig in. So this document is from Zaporozhye region, which is southern east part of Ukraine. It's a huge industrial area as well as a big agricultural area. The date is June 21st, 1983. So I was almost 12, and this is during the rule of Yuri Andropov. So Brezhnev passed away a year ago. And once again, it's a June 21st. So first thing I checked, and with Google it's so easy, I'm constantly being impressed, that June 21st of 1983 fell on Tuesday. So I thought, well, it's not too bad. That means that kids just skipped school in order to go and pick carrots. But then I was like, wait a minute, it's June. In Soviet Union, summer break, летние каникулы, started on June 1st and ended on August 31st, which means If these kids were taken to the fields on June 21st, that means they were on a summer break and they were forced to go back to school, hop on the buses, and go pick carrots. In my understanding, this is like a crime. If I rule the world and everything in it, I'll find the biggest carrot on that field and I'll jam where to the guy who come up with the idea to take kids off their summer break and force them to work picking carrots. Okay, moving along. So next, when they're talking about that supposedly children got poisoned by the chemical fumes, chlorophos and fazalon, and I looked it up. This is like some hardcore stuff that kills bugs and worms. Like they use fazalon on animals because flies put eggs in their animal skin, so they treat cows with that chemical, and then it says for 2 weeks you can't butcher this cow because the whole meat is poisoned. So first of all, this is a direct proof for people who claim that during the Soviet Union we didn't use any harming chemicals treating fruits and vegetables, that everything was natural. In fact, we used some hardcore chemicals, especially in the cotton industry. And secondly, I don't think you can get poisoned so bad by the fumes if the field was treated 5 days prior and it was a neighboring field. I think what happened, and it's just my guess, it's June, so probably a field next to the kids was strawberries or maybe peas, so something the kids wanted to snack on. So some kids were snacking on strawberries, unwashed strawberries, and they got poisoned. That kind of makes more sense to me personally than 5-day-old treatment fumes. And then think about it. Government forces kids, and they're talking about 7th to 9th grade, so it's 14 years old, 15 years old, 16-year-olds, go out in the fields and pick carrots by hand. And it's not like middle of nowhere, somewhere in Siberia or Far East. This is the industrial heartland of the Soviet Union, Zaporozhye region, factories upon the factories, steel making, car making, anything. And here we got children forced to pick carrots by hand. Let me put it into perspective. This is 1983. The Soviets launched the very first satellite into space, Sputnik. Hey, Sputnikov. 26 years prior, and we pick still carrots by hand. In 1961, 22 years prior events of 1983, Soviets sent a very first human into space, Yuri Gagarin. But we still pick carrots by hand, and potatoes by hand, and cabbage by hand, and many other crops. And then, of course, as a cherry on the top, or in this case, as a big fat carrot on the top, the situation at the incident, as well as the apartments where the families of the sick kids, the situation is normal and being controlled by KGB. As you may know by now, I also participated quite a bit in such collective farm outings, even I was born and grew up in Kiev, Ukraine. With school, I went many times harvesting beets, cabbages, tomatoes, you name it. And of course, I planted so many potatoes with my grandparents and parents, and I harvested so many potatoes as well. It's pretty much was every year tradition. You go help to plant potatoes, then in the fall you come back and you help to harvest potatoes. Everything, of course, was done by hand. Kind of similar situation happened with the military personnel. Soldiers were sent to collective farms to help to harvest potatoes, carrots, and whatever other manual labor. So you go to be trained to be a soldier, but then you end up in the fields working hard manual labor. And I posted before on YouTube in the community post pictures from these harvest times, and a lot of people thought it was a great idea. I have mixed feelings about it because it was forced. Like, we couldn't not to go. Like, I don't remember what would be the punishment. I think they will call your parents, they'll give you bad grade. But like you were required to go and work for free. I mean, think about it, a child forced labor, not being paid, and you had no choice but to go. I mean, where's the line between slavery and between, oh, we're just going to have fun as kids and they need to learn new skills? And not only children and military personnel, they also send scientists for like these research institutes, like Научно-исследовательский институт, like my mother worked there. In the fall, they also were sent like on Sundays to help harvest crops. And, you know, using scientists on this type of project is like using a microscope to drive nails into the board. I mean, you still can do the job, but this is so ineffective. And one time I stumbled upon on YouTube commercials, like videos showing equipment from a company called Sputnik, Spudnik, like Sputnik, but it's Sputnik, like potato spud. And I almost cried. These machines, they harvest in 1 minute what I probably harvested in 2 days by hand. So effective, so quick. It was sad, because I was just like, oh my goodness, why we didn't have that equipment, why we didn't develop anything like that. Probably because we had free labor. Well, comrades, I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe learned something new. I want to thank again everyone who supports me on patreon.com. Thank you so much, it's great support, and we'll talk to you soon.
This document was discovered by Ukrainian historian Eduard Andriushenko. I'll post link to his Facebook page below this video. So today we're gonna spend some more time perusing through the Declassified KGB document from 1967 from the Soviet Ukraine. So this KGB report is pretty much reflects the mood of the Soviet people around 1967, when the whole country was celebrating 50 years since the Great October Revolution of 1917. And just a quick reminder, the last thing we looked at in this document in the part 1 was a worker from Dnipropetrovsk who expressed his sarcasm that you should be getting ready for the 50th anniversary for 50 years, not for 1 year. Then you could save way more goods so you can put them on the shelves on November 7th. Similar thoughts were expressed by Yermakova Raisa, who worked as an inspector for human resources in Dnipropetrovsk Medical Institute. So here we're talking not just, you know, blue-collar worker. This is actually HR person. So that's like a middle-level management. She said, there are rumors around town that around the holidays, the trading organization will throw out this expression выбросить. So that's like they will put on the shelves in the stores a bunch of good items for sale. This is, of course, is wrong. Do you think we need good items only during the holidays? And another problem, that instead of celebrating the holidays, everyone will be running around the stores trying to snatch the stuff up. Next report is quite interesting. It came from Lvov, Western Ukraine, from Comrade Nudga, who worked at the Lvov Institute of Social Science. So that's quite interesting company. So along with the celebration of 50th anniversary of October Revolution, in Ukraine they had a 10-day celebration or commemoration of Russian literature and art. So in Ukraine, they were celebrating Russian literature and art. So this guy said that this 10-day celebration, so it looks like probably they were also celebrating 10 days of Ukrainian literature and art in Russia, but he says these celebrations are just очко втирательства, and that's really interesting Soviet term. It translates like eyewash, but it's what it means, like you actually show something which is really not happening, like almost like polishing the turd. So it's just the illusion about a friendship. Okay, so here's your new Russian word, more like Soviet word. Очко втирательства. Очко втирательства. If you translate it directly, it's like rub it into your glasses.
So this person from Lvov continues. In reality, there are thousands of newspapers published in Russian language in Ukraine. All the lectures in colleges being read in Russian. Everything is moving towards further Russification of Ukrainian population. And you know, the whole topic of Russification of Ukrainian population, Belarusian population, as well as other republics, it deserves a separate video. All I want to say right now is that when I went to school in 1980s, most schools in Kiev, capital of Ukraine, were Russian language schools. So all the subjects were in Russian language. Same with colleges. Most colleges in Kiev, education was done in Russian language. Only Western Ukraine had quite a bit of resistance. So if you want to study in Ukrainian, you had to go there. Otherwise, Kiev, all the eastern Ukraine was predominantly Russian speaking. I apologize for that small detour, and let's go back to our KGB document from 1967. Next part is actually hilarious. It says the KGB continues to receive signals about rumors that China is preparing to attack Soviet Union during the holidays celebration of 50th anniversary of October, as well as the rumors that Romania will get back its northern Bukovina region. I don't know if you're familiar with the history before World War II or at the beginning of World War II, that Soviet Union quite politely, let's put that way, took the northern Bukovina region from Romania and attached it to Ukraine. So here's the example of such rumor. A worker from Uzhgorod, so that's Bukovina region, I believe, Western Ukraine, Varota Mikhail, born in 1944, nationality he's Slovak, and member of the Communist Youth, Komsomol, mentioned in a conversation with our source. So it's interesting, he's talking to a guy who actually is KGB source. So he said that during October holidays there will be no parade even in Moscow because 2 million Chinese without weapons gonna attack Soviet Union. They're gonna attack the USSR in order to mess up celebrations. A worker from the Bushkinsky Lumber Company in Zakarpattia region, so it's Western Ukraine, born in 1919, not a party member, беспартийный, Pop Mikhail, said the following, that they're gonna have a holidays October in Carpathia region earlier than supposed to, not without reason. It's because there'll be no parade on October holidays. There's going to be war with China. Next report came from the town of Sokiryany, Chernivtsi region, so Western Ukraine again. So the woodworker Kravchinsky, born in 1928, not a party member, беспартийный, said following, I'm waiting when the war starts. So it's kind of amazing. We're talking 1967 and a bunch of people in Western Ukraine expecting war to begin any moment. Those people that I noticed or marked, I will finish them while they sleep in the bed. The first person I'm gonna kill is a manager of Sельхозтехника, so it's like a agriculture equipment, Zhuk, and then a worker of the local militia, which is Soviet police. And I'm not the only one. There is quite a few other guys, Ivanenko, Silko, and others that support me. And they're in touch with another person in Chernovtsi who has actually a pistol. The next report is quite unusual. So it looks like a Romanian citizen. So it's a citizen of the Socialist Republic of Romania, Guțuleac Alexei. So the name sounds like he is Ukrainian, but he became somehow a citizen of Romania. So he was visiting someone in Chernovtsi region, and when he was doing his documents about going back to Romania, оформление документов на отъезд, so you arrived to Ukraine, you register yourself, then when you're ready to leave, you're gonna mark again your documents that you live in. He announced, soon we will be back for Bessarabia and Bukovina. So, like, soon Romanians will return to take back
Bessarabia region and Bukovina region. And when someone replied there in the office that Bessarabia and Bukovina are historically our lands and we want to return them back, this Romanian citizen Guțuleac responded, "We're gonna shoot and you're gonna take it by force." So it looks like a large part of western Ukraine that used to be part of Romania was quite on fire around 1967, because another report says that collective farm worker kolkhoznik Goryachka Ilya, born in 1920, while talking to his neighbors, he mentioned he was listening on the radio for a radio station from abroad. It's like, remember I was telling you about those enemy voices from Germany and such. And they mentioned this radio program that Romania demands to return northern Bukovina back to Romania. So this kolkhoznik said that if our government decided to give Bukovina back to Romania, most people in the village gonna head out to the eastern Ukraine, because we remember how Romanians were torturing Ukrainian people. So he even mentioned that in Chernovitsky region and in many villages, for example in the village Mamalka, because of the rumors of the incoming war with Romania, local citizens purchasing a large quantity of soap, matches, salt, and any macaroni type of products. So they're getting ready for tough times and getting ready for war. And the following 3 pages just reports about any conversation that people own guns, hide guns, and how fast KGB reacts to that and searches, arrests people. Like one says that some guy mentioned that he buried at his father's garden machine gun, pistol, and ammunition that he hid while he was arrested, and right away it says they went to search for the weapons. And as like I said, report after report, as long as they heard something about guns, KGB on the top of it, searching for it. Well, comrades, I hope you enjoyed this little glimpse of the busy life of Ukrainian KGB in 1967, around celebration of 50th anniversary of October Revolution. If you have anything to add, please put in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, share with your friends, and we'll talk to you soon. It has been a while since we looked at some declassified KGB documents, so today we're gonna do exactly that. This document was discovered by Ukrainian historian Eduard Andriushenko. I'll post link to his Facebook page below this video.
I think this is an American guy pretending to be a Russian. I mean, Sergei Sputnikov? That's like if I changed my name to John Wayne Cheeseburger.
Don't you love these comments? They're so passionate. It's like adding some spice to my bland, long and boring videos. Thanks again, Lisha from Finland, who's helping me on these comments. Okay, so this document is dated of November 18, 1952. So just 1 year before Comrade Stalin passed away and huge changes would fall upon the country and actually upon the people mentioned in this story. It was classified as секретно, secret, so not совершенно секретно, which is top secret, just regular Soviet secret, секретно. So this report is addressed to ЦК КП Украины, so it's a Central Committee of Communist Party of Ukraine. And it was addressed to товарищу Мельникову L.G. So that's to Comrade Melnikov Leonid Georgievich, who at that time was the first secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine. Next year, his career gonna change drastically after the death of Stalin, but right now he's a top dog in Ukraine. So this is a сообщение, so it's a message about discovered group of дельцов-заготовителей. It's kind of interesting expression. So делец, it's not really like a complimentary term, so it's a dealer, procurers. So there's a people who were dealing with some stuff and they were buying
and selling stuff, operating on the territory of Ukrainian and Moldovan Soviet Socialist republics. So the Central Office of Militia, which is police back in the Soviet Union, of Zhytomyr region, that's where my father from, exposed in September of this year a group of criminals that was illegally procuring agricultural products on the territories of Zhytomyr, Vinnytsia regions of Ukraine, and Moldovan Soviet Socialist Republic. 7 people were arrested on criminal charges, including a procurer from several organizations from city of Tallinn, Estonian Soviet Socialist Republic. So purchasing was happening in Ukraine and Moldova. Selling was going on mostly in Estonia. So the main character was Yakovlev Mikhail, born in 1907. That's the same year my grandfather was born. So he was 45 years old in 1952. And he was bespartiyny. It's always important for some reason. They always mention the arrested person was a member of Communist Party or not member, which is bespartiyny means no party association, which we only had one party. No particular employment. That's another interesting term. So this guy, let's see what it says exactly. Без определенных занятий. So, we had 100% employment apparently in the Soviet Union, but some people could live and have no particular employment. So that was the case. Along with him was also arrested Lukyanchuk Kirill, born in 1912. So he was 4 years old in 1952. Also was no party association, bespartiyny, and also no particular employment, and some others. So the total of 7 people were arrested. After investigation, it was determined that Yakovlev, with a group of 6 dealers during 1950-1952, were procuring large quantities of fruits and vegetables in Zhytomyr and Vinnytsia regions and Moldavia, and shipped those via the railroad to different cities of the Soviet Union. For example, Comrade Yakovlev had a private contacts in Tallinn, so that's the capital of Estonian Soviet Socialist Republic, with Due Nord Restaurant, Estonian Restaurant Trust, and a central procurement warehouse of the Estonian Republican Union of Consumers. So that's actual official organizations in Estonia. So there was a restaurant, was a restaurant trust, and a warehouse. So he had a private contracts with them, according to which he supplied them with agricultural products in exchange of large amount of money. It's kind of interesting terminology. You exchange agricultural products for money. Well, you just sell them, but they say in exchange for large sums of money. From the beginning of 1950, Yakovlev Group procured and shipped only to Tallinn organizations. So there were other shipments going on, but going to the city of Tallinn, 1,200 tons. So ton is 1,000 kilograms of agricultural products. So I tried to figure out, so that's approximately 40 semi-truckloads of agricultural products, including 736 tons of fresh fruits. It's 20 semis, canned fruits, 173 tons, and other goods. So it's a quite large operation. They're shipping 40 semi-trucks of agricultural products, and it's just everything was going on illegally. Yakovlev was using collective farm workers, so-called kolkhozniki, for packing and loading the fruits that he procured from kolkhozes. So he was purchasing directly from collective farms and using collective farm workers to pack the goods and load them on the railroad cars. He forged fictitious payment documents and used those to receive and pocket cash, while kolkhozniks were compensated by trudodni checked in their workbooks. If you follow my channel, you should be familiar already with the Soviet workbook and how the collective farm workers were paid, which they were not paid at all. They had to have a check mark. They were required to provide so many days of work for their collective farm. So that's what they're talking about here, that kolkhozniks were just working, loading these fruits for the check mark, while the guy was forging the papers and actually claiming that he paid for labor and getting money out of collective farms for that labor that he never paid for.
So back to the report. By stealing and speculation, Yakovlev embezzled more than 100,000 rubles. So I did a quick math. Average salary in the Soviet Union in 1950 was about 600 rubles per month. So that's before the money reform that Khrushchev did later, and which he cut the zeros. So he had on his hand about 13 annual average salaries. So to put it in perspective, if you say in America there's an average salary about $60,000 a year, so this amount of 100,000 rubles equals to about $830,000. So guy was moving some serious cash, so close to $1 million. That's how much cash he had on hand by stealing and speculation. Under disguise of collective farm workers, Yakovlev and Company shipped via railroad and sold at speculative prices large quantities of fresh and dry fruits. Okay, so here I need to explain several things. So if you're a collective farm worker and you live out in a country like my grandparents did, so if you have several apple trees, you harvest your apples, you can go to the local market like in a nearby town and sell those apples, and it's totally okay. That's why they're talking here under disguise of collective farm workers. So if you have your own produce, potatoes, apples, you were allowed to sell it on the market, in the bazaars. Now, if you buy apples from someone else and then you resell them for profit, that was called speculation, and that was illegal. So that's what those guys were doing. They were doing speculation. If they would grow their own apples and sell them, they'll be fine. But because they were buying apples and reselling them for profit, it was illegal activity in the Soviet Union. And now back to the document. On September 6, criminals purchased from kolkhozniks in Katerinovka village, Berdychev region. And that's amazing because I looked it up. It's 1 hour away from the village that my father grew up, because he also was in the Zhytomyr region. So that was happening pretty much when my dad was really close to that place. So they purchased from that village, from the collective farm workers, 4 tons, which is about 8,800 pounds of apples for 3 rubles per kilo. I find it really suspicious that they could buy so many apples just from the regular people living in that village. That's a lot of apples. Something fishy about that. In Tallinn, Estonia, they sold those apples for 6 to 12 rubles per kilogram. So that's what I call speculation. They purchased apples for 3 rubles and they sold them for 6 to 12. So depending, I guess, on the quality, first grade was going for 12 rubles. Some with the marks or blemishes were going cheaper, but still, it's 100% margin. But of course, you need to consider they had to bribe people to put those apples on a train and ship it to Tallinn, Estonia, which is quite a ways from Zhytomyr region. During the arrest at the city market, so as I said, they were selling at the city market in Tallinn. Militia confiscated 2 tons of apples, 7,150 rubles, and a spravka, so that's a document from the collective farm manager in that village of Katerinovka that those apples belonged to kolkhozniks. So according to the papers, those 2 guys that got caught at the market, they supposedly were kolkhozniks, but of course they weren't, they were speculators. So my guess would be that there was a competition. So someone at that market in Tallinn got upset that they had a competition, people underselling them on apples, and they reported suspicious quantities because, hey, there's 2 kolkhozniks and they have 2 tons of apples that look suspicious. And militia came and checked it out and they got arrested. I think this is what happened. And this document ends with, to compensate government losses, so somehow government lost a lot of money, belongings of the criminals were confiscated at the amount of 100,000 rubles. So close to $800,000 worth of belongings, who knows what is, probably gold coins, gold jewelry, because there's really not much you could buy back in those days. And this document is signed by Minister of State Security of Ukraine, Pyotr Ivashutin. So let's talk about it. So this is an example when in a socialist society, some people were attempting to do some capitalistic criminal activities. They tried to make some money by speculation. They'll go in the villages, purchase
fruits and vegetables, ship it to distant places where desperately needed those fruits and vegetables, sell them at the profit, and get in trouble. In America, those people will have a Chiquita brand company bringing bananas, or Del Monte, whatever, Green Giant. That's how those companies were created, by people buying agriculture products in one location and sell it in a different location. In the Soviet Union, it was illegal and you can get in serious trouble. So as I mentioned earlier, this document was addressed to the first secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine, Melnikov Leonid Georgievich. And that guy was born in 1906. My grandfather was born in 1907, and he died in April of 1981. My grandpa died in 1982, so very close. And he was born pretty close to my grandpa, only 3 hours away, in the village Degtyaryovka, Chernihiv region. So he was born to the peasant family, just like my grandfather, but he figured out pretty quick that his future lies with the Komsomol, young communist organization. So he became a Komsomol apparatchik in 1924, being 18 years old. 4 years later, he became a communist in 1928. During the war, he actually fought together with Nikita Khrushchev in Stalingrad in 1942, and I guess they become good friends. And because of those relations, in 1949, he became the first secretary of the Communist Party of Ukraine. But soon after, something very interesting and unusual happened. It says that during anti-Semite campaign, so in the last years of Stalin rule, he went hardcore after Jewish people in the Soviet Union. So during that campaign, Melnikov was actually acting like a hardliner, and he made Khrushchev unhappy about it. So guess what happened after the death of Stalin? In 1953, Leonid Melnikov lost his position, and for грубое искривление ленинско-сталинской национальной политики. So that you can translate it like a severe bending of the policy of Lenin and Stalin regards to national policies. And he was sent to Romania as an ambassador for a couple of years. Then he was a minister of the coal industry of the Soviet Union from 55 to 57, and then he was sent to Kazakhstan to do some party work there. So guy lost all his cool positions. It was kind of just helping here and there, and he died in Moscow in 1981. But still, he wasn't shot, he wasn't sent to Gulag, so he did pretty good for getting in trouble with the leader of the Soviet Union. Khrushchev was a way nicer guy than Comrade Stalin. And he was a quite well-decorated Soviet apparatchik. He received 5 Lenin awards, Order of Lenin, which is the second highest award in the Soviet Union after Hero of the Soviet Union. He had 5 of those. He also received 1 Order of October Revolution, and that's pretty much people were awarded for promoting communism and reinforcing defenses of the Soviet Union. Kind of interesting terminology there. He also received Order of Red Banner of Labor, Krasного Рабочего Знамени, Order of Great Patriotic War, and a bunch of medals. So he actually was quite decorated guy. But still, he wasn't shot, he wasn't sent to Gulag, so he did pretty good for getting in trouble with the leader of the Soviet Union. Khrushchev was a way nicer guy than Comrade Stalin. Interestingly, the guy who signed this document, Minister of State Security of Ukraine, Pyotr Ivashutin, his career went in opposite direction, but the beginning was quite similar of his career. He got drafted to army in 1931, and by 1937, he became a pilot of TB-3 bomber. Those are huge Soviet bombers. First he was a pilot, and he became a commander of that bomber. During the World War II, he started working for SMERSH, which is like SMERSH Spionom, death to spies. So it's like a military intelligence for the Red Army. In 1951, he got a position of Ukraine State Security, Minister of the State Security of Ukraine. He was doing it for 4 years.
and then he moved to Moscow in 1954 when KGB was created. Comrade Ivashutin definitely deserves separate video because he, after working at KGB for a while, he became a main guy at GRU, and he was the leader of GRU for 26 or something like that years. So GRU was created and developed under his management, and he became the hero of the Soviet Union in 1985. So this guy has a quite interesting history, and I'm planning to probably work more researching him and making a separate video. But somehow he got into this document about speculators of the fruits and vegetables, but that was his original job, and then later he became the most dangerous guy in the Soviet Union. So yeah, I thought it was quite interesting to see the difference. In America, people who will find a way to make a 100% profit, they become millionaires. In Soviet Union, you become a criminal and go to prison for making same profits. So I hope you enjoyed this story, and we'll talk to you soon.
Today we're gonna look again at the classified document of the KGB of Ukraine, dated back in July 1976. This document was discovered by the Ukrainian historian Eduard Andriushenko. Please check his YouTube channel called KGB Files. But before we begin, I would like you to pause this video and post a comment how old you were back in 1976. I was 5. I already made several videos about this document, and today we finally got to the page number 6. On page 6 there's a chapter called «О пребывании американской молодежной делегации, Крымская область», concerning American youth delegation visit in Crimean region. 8-14 июля 1976 года по приглашению... Oops, you guys don't understand any Russian. Okay. On July 8 to 14 of 1976, YMCA delegation consisting of 4 people visited Crimea. They were invited by the Youth Organizations Committee of the USSR. I'm always trying to say committee instead of committee. So that's already interesting. We have YMCA from the USA visiting USSR. I'm a horrible singer. During their visit of collective farm named after Nadezhda Krupskaya in the village of Mikhailovka. Okay, so now we have to stop here. So kolkhoz, collective farm in Crimean region, was named after Nadezhda Krupskaya, who was wife of Vladimir Lenin, who had nothing to do with agriculture. But we had this instant tradition of naming factories, collective farms, you name it, after some famous Soviet people. Number 1, of course, was Vladimir Lenin, so there'll be factory имени Владимира Ленина. Collective farms, probably thousands of those were named after Lenin. And in this case, we had a collective farm named after Nadezhda Krupskaya, the wife of Vladimir Lenin. And of course, before 1953, there were a lot of places named after our great leader, Joseph Stalin. Like, for example, factory in Moscow was called ZIS, Zavod имени Stalina. It was manufacturing trucks. Then it became ZIL, Zavod имени Likhacheva. But let's talk about Nadezhda Krupskaya really quick. She was born in 1869. Then she met and married Vladimir Lenin. Well, she met Vladimir Ulyanov. That was his real last name. And Lenin, of course, is his nickname, party nickname. But what I found really interesting is she never took his last name. So she never became Nadezhda Ulyanova or Nadezhda Lenina. She remained Nadezhda Krupskaya. So of course, even after the death of Lenin back in 1924, Nadezhda Krupskaya was quite a heavyweight in the party circles in Moscow. And actually, back in 1925, she supported so-called new opposition, Zinoviev and Kamenev's struggle against Stalin. And obviously, someone named Comrade Stalin wasn't happy about that. And surprisingly, shortly after, Nadezhda Krupskaya announced that she was planning to emigrate to the United Kingdom, which I found extremely interesting. And for some reason, she wasn't able to emigrate, and soon after, she actually went against Zinoviev and Kamenev, and she voted to exclude them from the Communist Party, as well as exclude from the party Leon Trotsky. Joseph Stalin was never a big fan of Nadezhda Krupskaya, even when Lenin was alive, and apparently one time he was so rude to Krupskaya that she was in tears and she complained to her husband, and Vladimir Lenin wrote really nasty letter to Stalin demanding an apology. Stalin caved in and apologized. And I must tell you, if a Georgian has to apologize to a woman, this is like a really big insult to his manly pride. So Comrade Stalin was, I can't think of it as English impression, like he had rocks in his pockets that he kept for Krupskaya. Now we need to jump in our story into 1939. So Nadezhda Krupskaya had a birthday party. She was celebrating turning 70. And guess what? Comrade Stalin sent her a birthday cake. Later that night, she began feeling under weather. She got really sick the next day. They called the ambulance. It took ambulance to get to Krupskaya 3.5 hours. And they said that it took about 9 hours for her to finally to be examined by a doctor in a hospital, but that time was too late and she died. So pretty much the next day after her birthday. So her birthday was on February 26, which was Sunday. Krupskaya died next day, which was Monday. She was cremated on the Wednesday and buried on Thursday. So no medical examination, no displaying in some public place, because she was a big deal in the Soviet Union, the widow of the Lenin, the first leader of the Soviet Union. Everything was done super quick, so I personally find it extremely suspicious. So besides that collective farm in Crimea region that carries name of Nadezhda Krupskaya, currently it's not a collective farm, now it's an agrofirma, so it's an agricultural company. There's also a collective farm in Saratov region that also had name of Krupskaya, and a Sovkhoz, Soviet collective farm in Ulyanovsk region. There was also a candy factory in Leningrad, and actually it's still in business, that factory. Now it's called St. Petersburg, that carries name Krupskaya candy factory. There is also a chicken processing plant in the capital of Belarus, Minsk, that carries the name Krupskaya. That's kind of odd choice to name a chicken processing plant after the wife of Comrade Lenin. And there was also a beautiful passenger boat or ship, which was actually built in Germany, that has name Nadezhda Krupskaya. I apologize for this long detour, and let's go back to our KGB document about YMCA visit to the collective farm in Crimea. So this collective farm imeni Nadezhdy Krupskaya was located in Mikhailovka village, which also had a quite interesting history. Back in 1800s, this village was called Karamek, and that's where the Crimean Tatars lived. Then they abandoned that place sometimes around 1860, right after the Crimean War. I don't know if anybody knows the history. There was a war between Russia and I believe it was England and France together. There was a Crimean War. Russia on one side and England and France were on the other side, if I remember correctly. So after that war, a large swath of Tatars from Crimea immigrated to Turkey, so that village, Karamek, became abandoned. Shortly after, the German settlers moved in and renamed the village into Klinenthal. By 1939, there were around 750 German villagers there, but on August 18, 1941, so that's pretty much about 2 months after the Great Patriotic War with Nazi Germany began, all the Germans were put on the trains and shipped to Siberia or northern Kazakhstan, so that village was emptied completely. After the war was over in 1945, this village was renamed once again, this time to Mikhailovka, and they had a new settlers arriving from Zhytomyr region, Ukraine. And Zhytomyr region, that's where my father is from. And once again, back to our KGB report. So during the visit, the foreigners were asking local kolkhozniks, collective farm workers, about their salaries and the reasons why youth is leaving kolkhoz for the cities. I found this part extremely interesting because, okay, I'm not an American, but I believe that in the United States, it's not polite to ask people how much money are they making. It's just not that kind of culture like that. Back in the Soviet Union, it was totally normal to ask what's your salary, because, well, pretty much everyone was making pretty close the same, around 150 to 200 rubles a month. But to see here a report that Americans were asking locals how much money they make, that's really interesting. I was surprised to see that Americans would be asking questions like that. During the visit to the local kindergarten, one of the American ladies, her name was Maury B. So Maury, I guess that's the last name, offered kids to play an American national game. So I already found it hilarious. I never knew there's an American national game. Okay, I want to remind you guys, this is a KGB classified report. It's not just like a newspaper article. So this lady told the kids they need to take their shoes off and pile it in the middle. Now, I had a chuckle here too, because I recognized, I have a guy I work with, he's a former Marine. And he told me that during his boot camp, they had this, wasn't a game among the Marines, the recruits, called Mount Sarabachi. And that's all the Marines, they will pile up their shoes in the middle of the barrack, and then at the whistle they're supposed to run as quick as possible, find their shoes or grab any shoes, put it on, and then they go for like 10-mile run. So that was called Mount Sarabachi. So that sounds like that. You make everyone pile the shoes in one spot, and then you make them run, and you need to, the loser won't have shoes on, everyone else should be having shoes on. So people grab any shoes they can get hold of to put them on. So when she told the kids, go ahead, grab the shoes, there was a real chaos, and Americans were taking pictures and laughing. So the manager of that kindergarten, as well as a local representative of Crimean Komsomol organization, told YMCA group leader Mr. Tweston that such behavior wasn't acceptable. And that would be amazing to find those 4 YMCA folk that went back in 1976 to Crimea and get their personal accounts, personal recollection of those events, because that sounds like they had a lot of fun. And this interesting chapter ends with really dry words that KGB report was filed to Moscow for the Council of the Ministers of the Soviet Union. So that went to the highest level of Soviet government, this silly YMCA youth visit to Crimea. Well, my friends, it's all I have for you today. I hope you learned something new, maybe had a little chuckle like I did. As always, don't forget to like this video, please, share with your friends, and we'll talk to you soon.
Hello, comrades. This is your favorite Soviet nerd, Comrade Sergey.
Problem is that this guy has very little knowledge about the USSR. He is so dumb that sometimes he cannot distinguish between shortcomings of the Ukrainian Soviet Republic and simply technology of the time. When he left his home country, he was barely old enough to understand dynamics of the society he lived in.
So today we're going to take a look at another interesting KGB document from 1953, just got surfaced. And it was declassified in 2013. This is a report from Ukrainian KGB to the Central Committee of Communist Party of Ukraine. And as I said, it was dated June 1953, and it was secret, so not top secret, just secret. So a short history background. In March of 1953, Comrade Stalin passed away. So we're talking less than 4 months or so. So this is the events when Khrushchev just became the leader of the Soviet Union. So that was this is the time frame. So this KGB report is addressed to Comrade Kirichenko Alexei Illarionovich, and I got curious and looked it up, and God bless Google. It makes researchers' life so easy now, because in less than 5 minutes I actually found out quite an interesting story about this Comrade Kirichenko. So Kirichenko was quite interesting character, and he's kind of like the standard Soviet apparatchik. His life was very similar to many other Soviet leaders. He was born in 1908, grew up in a poor family in Ukraine, so he was Ukrainian. and he went through all the struggles. And then his lucky strike was in 1938, so he was only 30 when he met Nikita Khrushchev. So they became good friends. He survived the war, and he was with the Khrushchev during World War II. So, of course, it helps to know important people in the Soviet Union, just like pretty much anywhere else. And that helped him to become a general, not a general, but first secretary of Central Committee of Communist Party of Ukraine in June of 1953. So same month that this report, he became first secretary of the Communist Party of Ukraine. And Kirichenko becoming a first secretary, it was kind of like a big deal for Ukraine, because for the first time ever, the Ukrainian became the top dog of Ukrainian Communist Party. Prior to that, never it was a Ukrainian as a first secretary. So it's kind of interesting. Ukrainian Communist Party wasn't run by Ukrainians. And he was trusted by Khrushchev, so he would just keep on climbing the communist ladder. Later, he moved up to Moscow, and I believe he was like a second in command after Khrushchev in the Soviet Union for a while, but then he got in trouble. And his troubles were so Soviet. When I found out about it, I was just chuckling. So in 1959, during the hunt, so apparently Comrade Khrushchev was quite a big fan of hunting. Mr. Comrade Kirichenko and Nikita Khrushchev shot at the same boar. So the boar got killed, and they got into argument who actually killed the boar. When they cut the boar open, they found 2 bullets, and of course, whoever did that claimed that there was a Nikita's shot that finished the boar, and Comrade Kirichenko got upset, started yelling that's not truth, and Khrushchev wasn't happy about it. And after that, Kirichenko's career took a steep dive. In my personal opinion, it's really not a good idea to choose people that loyal to you, not people who are smart and good in their field, because all you do is just surround yourself with a bunch of butt kissers instead of professionals, and you can't run the company or the country well. So Comrade Kirichenko ended up resigning from his position as second secretary of the Soviet Communist Party, and then just kind of he was taking positions of less and less significance, and then he retired, and he passed away in 1975, and that went completely unnoticed. And now back to our document, and I apologize for this long detour. It gets me every time, and that's what makes my videos so long and boring. Okay, so now we're back to our KGB document from 1953, and it's titled Сообщение, so it's like an information about arrest of the group of spekulanты. So spekulant is people who speculate, who sell for profit, which was illegal. It was crime in the Soviet Union. And this arrest happened in March of 1953 in the Ukrainian town of Stanislav. Now, if you look at the map right now, you won't be able to find Stanislav because it's not there. Stanislav was the old Polish town that became part of Ukraine after World War II, when the Stalin carved a big chunk of Poland and transferred it to Ukraine. And in 1962, so about 9 years after this report, it was renamed into Ivano-Frankovsk, after the famous Ukrainian writer Ivan Franko. Okay, so before we get to this report, I want to warn you guys, if you have a sensitive stomach, you might don't want to listen any further, because when I was sharing this story with my wife, she got very upset about the whole story and about all the details mentioned in this story. So this report states that the local militia in Stanislav region arrested on May 23rd, 1953, a group of speculanti, total of 3 people, that were speculating meat, and also were producing meat products using meat from fallen cattle and killed dogs. So we're talking about animals that died from diseases and got not like slaughtered animals. Then the report mentions the members of this criminal group. The main guy was Edward Gangnus, born in 1916, Polish, not a party member, who worked at the local Stanislav Gorka Munhoz. It's like a local city management facility, and he was in charge of catching stray dogs. And also it's kind of interesting, it mentioned that in 1941 till 1944 he served in the German labor battalion. So he was during German occupation, he actually worked for Germans. Second arrested person was his wife, Gangnus Mikhailina, born in 1919. So this couple, they're in the late 30s. She was Ukrainian by nationality, non-party member, and it mentions she nigде не работала, so she didn't work anywhere. So notice the detail, they always mention nationality of arrested person and also if they party members or not. And a kind of interesting side note, in the description of this female person, they also mentioned her two brothers, Mikhail and Vladimir. They served in German police during the occupation, and in 1944 they ran away with Germans to the Polish territory. So those guys were bad guys. And the third person, helper, was Yestafi Shpirak, born in 1912, a Ukrainian, a non-party member. Also, he lived in Stanislav and didn't work anywhere. So officially they were unemployed. But remember, in Soviet Union there was zero unemployment. So according to militia report, Comrade Gangnus, who was in charge of catching stray dogs, he killed them. Then he sold the skin to Zagod Korsiryo. So there was a company purchasing from population like cow hides and stuff. So he sold dog hides to this company, and then but meat was sold to people using his wife. So he call it that it's a beef, and also they used the fat of the dogs. I don't know how much stray dogs have fat, but that's what was done. So they were selling dog hides and then selling dog's meat, claiming there was beef. Well, it's getting even better. Besides that, he also was going to the cattle cemetery and recovered fallen pigs. So, you know, if the pig died from natural disease, you have to throw it away. You can't use it. So he was watching that cattle cemetery, pet cemetery, and he was stealing those dead pigs, and then they made different kalbasas and sausages out of it, and also they cooked the fat to turn it to smolet, so that would be like a lard, turn into lard. And these products were sold on the market by his wife. And as example, they mentioned then on night of May 23rd, Comrade Gangnus picked up at the cattle cemetery a dead pig that weighed about 90 kilos with the purpose of making sausages out of it and selling on the market. So it sounds like somebody caught him stealing that dead pig, fallen pig, and then he got arrested. During the apartment search, militia or cops discovered 25 kilograms of cooked lard from the fallen animals. There was this dead pig. They also discovered 13 pieces of raw dog hides and 2 pieces of cow hides. So I guess he recovered 2 fallen cows and processed them, but still had skins, still had hides. Then it states that lab analysis confirmed that confiscated meat contained, in Russian it's called trupная палочка. Google translated like cadaveric stick. So this bacteria that appears in the when dead body, right? So cadaveric bacilla, whatever, and so that's not a good stuff to eat because you can get sick really bad. And then that the cooked lard actually was a mix of dog fat with pig fat. During the investigation, it was discovered that Comrade Gagnus during 1952-1953 picked up at the cattle cemetery 3 dead pigs, 2 of which was already processed into sausages and sold at the market of Stanislav, that town, for 20 rubles per kilo, and they sold that lard for 30-35 rubles per kilo. Besides those activities, his wife, together with that third person that got arrested, Spirak, they traveled quite a few times to Riga, Latvia, so the two Baltic states, where they brought fabrics and this says modelная обувь, so like stylish shoes, model shoes, which they resold for speculativные цены, so for speculative prices in Stanislav. So quite an entrepreneurship couple. They made their own meat, made their own sausages. They went and purchased the shoes and fabrics to resell. So there's a real capitalist right there. They're just not popular in Soviet Union. Probably model shoes, proper translation would be like designer shoes. So in Riga, they still make nice looking shoes. And then it claims that money that they made with these criminal ways, they managed to purchase a house for 55,000 rubles. That's a lot of money. And as well as a lot of says ценные вещи. So usually it's like expensive goods. So they probably claim it's like golden chains, rings and stuff like that. So they invest the extra cash because you can't buy, boat or go on a trip. So those, they spent like 100,000 rubles on that thing. So they made a lot of money. So they got arrested, their stuff got confiscated, and investigation continues. Okay, my goodness, so this is the end of this report, and I understand that there is quite a bit to digest, no pun intended, in this story, and I hope your stomach stayed solid and didn't lurch around. So there's quite a few conclusions you can actually produce out of this report. First of all, people who believe that during Stalin or after Stalin that Soviet Union was doing great, there was stores had plenty, that kind of tells you that people were desperate. Like, they paid a lot of money for meat on the market. That means the stores had bare shelves, they had nothing to sell. If people risking dealing with dead animals like that, with fallen animals, going to the cattle cemeteries and they recover pigs and then they use dead, killed stray dogs to process. So it tells me that people probably were starving and ready to buy any questionable product just because they need to eat. And the second conclusion, I think we talked about it before, that there were people out there in the Soviet Union that actually wanted to have a business, make their own money. Here we're talking about, if they will be in America, they'll be, Oscar Mayer level type company, because they come up with some amazing recipe that even picking up dogs and fallen pigs, they managed to make delicious sausages that people were buying over and over again and had no questions about origins. So they probably would be very successful here in America, but they got in big trouble there in the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, there's no information about what happened to those criminals, but my guess, they went to prison for extended period of time, at least 5 to 10 years, if maybe more, because that's pretty nasty what they were doing. But here you are, life in the Soviet Union in 1950s, making sausages from killed dogs and fallen pigs. I wanted to say I hope you enjoyed this video, but I know you didn't enjoy this video, but I hope you learned something new. and we'll talk to you soon.
Just a friendly reminder that my book American Diaries is available on Amazon.com, or shoot me an email if you would like to have a signed copy. Thank you.
So today we're going to look some more into this very interesting KGB document from 1970, and this is KGB of Ukraine, where it's analyzing the results of the interviews and refusals for the Soviet citizens that wanted to travel to the other countries. And in this report, they also noticed, just like we did in our previous video, that the majority of refusals for the Soviet citizens came from the people from Dnipropetrovsk region, which is in 1969, 175 people get refused, and next year 229 people get refused. Donetsk region was next, 210 people in 69 and 184 people in 1970. And we had a huge jump in Kiev region, 75 in 1969 and doubled to 151 persons in 1970. And then KGB pats itself on its back, claiming that increasing refusals or so-called bypasses for people from 1969 into 1970, it's a proof that KGB did way more careful work in studying and checking the candidates. But then right away, after saying they're doing a better job, they have a disclaimer that we want to make sure you understand. So that's reported to their superiors, that even more strict checks don't guarantee that we can stop completely bad behavior of people in our people in other countries, and then we will stop everyone with the negative qualities from sneaking out to the other countries. So now that goes into interesting part. So KGB reports that they are aware of 1,025 cases of грубое нарушение. So that's interesting Russian expression. So it's not just like you broke some rules. It's like you did really bad breaking. So not just you just slightly did something naughty. It was like something really bad by Soviet citizens that went to the other countries as tourists or specialists or members of delegations, as well as part of some artist or sports teams. So it happened in 1969 496 times, and in 1970 it went up to 529 times of these extreme cases of breaking the rules in other countries. Then what follows is a breakdown of all these breaking the rules and what exactly happened. 239 cases of speculation. And we're talking speculation. If you listened to or watched my video about that cruise, that people were bringing vodka on the shore and try to sell vodka to get some hard currency so they can do some purchasing. So speculation was number one, 239 case. So that's people bringing goods from Soviet Union, smuggling stuff. Usually there's only specific items that the foreigners were interested. Maybe some souvenirs, maybe some silver coins from way back. Cameras, some Soviet cameras were popular. Then maybe gold. 241 cases, actually even more than speculation. Валютные операции, so they're dealing with hard currency. So once again, Soviet tourists are desperate to get hard currency one way or other. So here they're trying to trade maybe rubles for British pounds or for German Deutschmarks. So, or they're trying to smuggle money out of Soviet Union, got caught on the border there. So that was another popular. So you see, they travel not to see the country, other countries. They travel to purchase something, maybe make extra money, but mostly I think is to buy stuff that they couldn't buy in the Soviet Union. 95 cases of аморальное поведение. So that's another like immoral behavior. So this is probably hiring prostitutes or trying to have sex with your guide or trying to pick up some chicks on the streets So, if you remember way back, we talked about this famous Soviet meme, there is no sex in Soviet Union. So since there is no sex in Soviet Union, Soviet people were trying to have some sex in Western decayed societies. Next one is pretty funny. It's only 8 times happened, but it's преклонение перед буржуазным образом жизни. Oh my goodness, this is so Soviet. So this is like you being amazed by the bourgeois lifestyle. So you like being like, oh my goodness, look how beautiful, look how rich they are. And so if you express that out loud, you can get in trouble. You're supposed to quietly watch it and don't say a word. Another popular way of breaking rules, but I was just breaking rules, Soviet rules, it's that you broke away from your group, so you went and did something on your own, which some people did, they stay in a hotel and you just sneak out at night. Maybe you just want to walk the streets and watch the nightlife, or maybe you looking for some midnight adventures. So that was happened 101 times. And then next one was contraband, which is kind of relates to probably speculation, also trying to smuggle stuff. And then KGB summarized that the most amount of these crimes were noticed from the people coming from Voroshilovgrad region, Dnipropetrovsk region, Donetsk region, all 3 are heavy industries, Zhytomyr region, Zaporozhye region, Zaporozhye another heavy industry region, then Kiev, capital of Ukraine, Crimea, Odessa, and Kharkov. So mostly, the most hardcore, naughty people lived in the heavy industries regions. Okay, and now there's really cool stuff. There's examples of actual crimes that were reported by KGB, and quite often, that happened in other countries. So they got information from police in France and other countries.
Номер 1.
Number 1. Well, this is amazing. So, Khokhlov Afanasy Ivanovich, born in 1910, member of the Communist Party, and second in command of the Ministry of Coal Industries of Ukraine. So we're talking like Department of Energy here in America, right? So it's the second in command of Department of Coal Industry of Ukraine. Communist. So he got caught in May 1970 in Napoli, Italy, during his Mediterranean cruise. He was trying to smuggle a bag into the port, into town, with cigarettes and vodka, but was caught by local police. So his position is заместитель министра, so it's like a vice minister, so second in command of, and he was trying to smuggle cigarettes and vodka into Italy to make some extra cash. So he was on this cruise with his wife, and I said those cruises were so expensive, only very rich people in Soviet Union could afford it. A 60-year-old guy trying to smuggle cigarettes and vodka into Italy, and he got caught. Another case, this is visiting Romania, so even not like a capitalistic country. So engineer from the Vinica radio lamp factory, Reznik Vladimir, born in 1937. So he was quite young, only 33 years old. So he was a tourist in Romania. He excessively consumed alcohol, sold his camera, was making contacts with foreigners, and was live in hotel without permission, didn't spend the night in hotel. So he had a lot of fun, sounds like it. Next one is so classic. So this guy, born in 1940, so in 1969, so he is very young, 29-year-old only. Not a party member, but he was in Bulgaria. He had too much alcohol and fell off the 4th floor balcony of the hotel being drunk. So comrade Piligrim Grigory from Donetsk factory got so wasted, fell off the balcony in Bulgaria. Another Bulgaria accident in 1970. So a guy from Chernobyl, Western Ukraine, Redko Vasily, member of Communist Party, and he was actually the leader of the group of these tourists. So he was systematically drinking a lot and meeting ladies with light attitude. This is another polite expression, women of light attitude, легкого поведения. So he was chasing whores and being drunk while being a leader of the group. So that's also happened in Bulgaria, which I'm kind of surprised that Bulgaria had prostitutes available those days. Next one is kind of interesting. So the comrade Shuvaev Fyodor, first name Fyodor, last name Shuvaev, he was in United Arab Republic in 1969. So this is interesting. It was his wife, and he worked in another Dnieprometallurg Montage, so some kind of construction company relates to the metal construction. He was born in 1927, so not a young guy, from Dneprodzerzhinsk, Ukraine, member of Communist Party. So he was speculated with cigarettes and also shoe glue and other things that he brought from the USSR. His wife showed скупость и жадность. This is unbelievable. She was really tight, and I guess she was bargaining really hard, buying anything, which is, I guess, not good. So even KGB noticed that. So they actually were shipped out of the country earlier. So they didn't, because of their speculations and other things, they were shipped earlier back to Soviet Union for their behavior. So it's kind of interesting. Older people, they are bringing stuff, trying to sell it and make money and buy something. Younger people, they just want to get drunk and have fun. Next crime is so romantic. So during a tourist trip to France, so now we have a main guy in charge of the coal mine. So this is coal mine Severna in Krivorozh region. He's a second guy in command. So he's заместитель начальника, they call it. So he's like a vice manager, right? He was pretty young, he was about 40 years old. So he was drinking excessively. Then he started having sex with a French guide translator. So the chick that was helping this tourist group, they actually started having romantic relations. And at night he would disappear from his group, taking that girl or lady with him to different fun places that call увеселительные заведения, and completely ignored the comments from the leader of the group. So based on this information, he was kicked out of the Communist Party upon returning back to Ukraine. So KGB reported on him, and local Communist Party decided that his behavior don't match with the level that communists should be at. Next one is quite unusual. So this is May of 1970, and Vladimir Parikov, which is he's a manager of anyways, so this is a company that clean biological cleaning company from Kiev region, member of Communist Party. He was on his way from Mongolia, so he brought along 30 badges with the picture of Mao Zedong and one Chinese quotation book in Russian language. So Mao Zedong badges and Mao Zedong quotation book, they all were discovered at the customs and confiscated. So this is really strange. Why would he bring those metal badges? I would guess he met some Chinese guy who just gave him as a present for propaganda of Chinese ideology. I'm not sure what's going on here, but this is strange. Or maybe he thought he was going to make some money selling those in Kiev. Not sure. Well, I gotta say, besides the just being amazed of these petty crimes, right? It gives you actually useful information about different locations where the Soviet tourists went. Because next one is Syria and Livan. Libya. No, Livan is not Libya. It's Libya. So this is Middle East. So this guy in April 1970, This guy was actually working for a young communist organization, Komsomol, in Cherkasy region, member of Communist Party, Anatoly Golub. He stole a camera from another fellow Soviet tourist and sold it to the local people, and he got kicked out of Communist Party. So this is amazing. First of all, we discovered that people went to Syria and Lebanon. Here we go, Lebanon. Syria and Lebanon as a tourist, and then he is being a Communist Party member, working in a region, local region, Obkom Party. Anyways, he's like so supposedly be a good guy politically, and then he's stealing a camera from the other guy to sell to the locals. And this one is just plain sad. So this lady, Svetlana Yefimova, and she's also some high position in Ukrainian Institute of Scientific Information. So she, like, in charge of Department of Corrections. So you check spelling and everything, information before people publish their different scientific works. And she was applying to be a member of Communist Party. So she got caught in Brussels trying to steal a pen at one of the local stores. So this group went to Belgium and Luxembourg, and she was trying to steal a pen at the local store, and got caught by local police. Then a local Soviet embassy got involved, and the embassy paid the fee, but this lady was moved. They shipped her back to the Soviet Union right away. So in order to kind of keep it hush-hush, this embarrassment situation, the local embassy kind of like, okay, let's just not bring any charges. There is the money for the stupid pen, and we're going to ship her back to the Soviet Union. And the lady, I mean, they didn't specify her age, but I assume she would be in her 50s, and she's a really high position, like job-wise, back in Ukraine, and she's trying to steal a pen in Luxembourg. And in the end of this fantastic document, there is some recommendations that KGB provides that at work, when the local managers they look at applications for traveling, they should really be careful and pay a lot of attention to the moral qualities of applicants, how they behave at home and at work, know their weak sides, weak parts of their characters. And also they recommend to stop allowing people to take alcohol as a souvenir to the other countries, because they never take it as a souvenir, always use it for trading or speculations or excessive drinking. It's just priceless. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I truly enjoyed studying this document. It's so amazing. I mean, I lived in the Soviet Union for 20 years, but of course, unfortunately, I never knew about this stuff. Had no clue what was going on. So now it's like eye-opener to see this interesting part of the Soviet culture, is these people that are like a cream of the crop of the Soviet Union, top managers, ministers. They behave quite pathetically once they leave the Soviet Union and they see the Western decay in society. Alright, so we will talk to you soon.
I had quite a few people asking me to share my recollections about interactions with people from the other socialist camp countries like Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, and so on. Unfortunately, personally, I never met anyone from other countries like that, but I found just recently interesting KGB document dated from 1982, and it's quite an interesting story about relations between Polish citizens and Soviet citizens. So as I mentioned, this is a KGB report dated summer of 1982, and its title is Unfriendly Attitudes from the Polish Citizens, and it happened in Volyn region, Ukraine. So it's a western Ukraine on the border with Poland. So here we go. On June 16, 1982 at 16:30. For those who are not familiar with military time, it's 4:30 p.m. at the border station Izov in Lvov Railroad. Arrived the train with military personnel from Polish People's Republic. They were coming back from the military exercise that happened in Astrakhan region, Russia. And it's kind of interesting. I looked it up really quickly. Man, God bless Google. It's made information search so much easier. I just picture myself going to the library and put in a request. Now it's just like on your fingertips. So definitely they had a big military exercise called Shield 82, Щит 82. So that's at the height of the Soviet power. And in the West it was known as a 7-day nuclear war training. And part of that exercise was a joint military exercise in Astrakhan region. So there was Warsaw Pact troops there practicing. And there was much more going on, was shooting missiles from submarines in Northern Pole, launching spy satellites, shooting down satellites. That was a huge military exercise. As I said, it's called Shield 82, Щит 82. So it seems that Polish troops were aboard. I guess they were away for quite a while, so they're on the train station right before crossing the border, so I guess they had to wait. According to KGB report, there was another train next to them loaded with ore. They don't specify what ore, probably iron ore, I assume. So Polish troops, they were messing with that train cars, and they disconnected airline supplies. They put different brakes and other crap on the rails. So they were messing with the train sitting, the cargo train staying right next to them. Then it goes interesting part. Besides that, they were causing some damage. Polish soldiers were offering Soviet citizens different grocery items, продукты питания, and they were attempting to take pictures of Soviets accepting food. So I kind of see this kind of condescending attitude. They offer some food items that I guess we didn't have in Soviet Union and want to take a picture so the Soviets look like beggars, or they excited, to open. And maybe they're talking about kids begging for chewing gum, because I remember that was a huge thing for any Soviet kid to get some foreign chewing gum. Then report continues that at the previous stop at Kovel train station, 8 Polish officers were late for the train. So somehow they went out of the Kovel to hang out, drink, or do whatever. So they didn't make it, and train left without them. So they arrived to that Izov border station at 19:07, 7:07 p.m., which caused the whole train to be late for 4 hours to cross the border into the Poland. Then it says, in order to prevent the future occurrences of such events from the side of the Polish military, Ukrainian KGB, together with the local military commandants, border patrols, and militia, we called our police militia, will start intensified patrolling at the places of such train stopping with Polish troops. And report was sent to KGB of the Soviet Union. So that's a local Ukrainian KGB report, and then they forwarded that report to the Moscow. But it's interesting, so they okay, so Polish soldiers are not friendly, So we're gonna patrol them and isolate them for the locals. So this is kind of interesting to see that we didn't really have a super friendly relations between Soviets and at least Polish citizens, young Polish soldiers. We're talking about, barely teenagers, right? And they're 18, 19-year-olds. And another reason I might see it, and I may be wrong, is Western Ukraine used to be part of Poland. So Polish people probably kind of had some negative emotions about that, like we on our Polish territory that we lost to the Soviet Union, so they're not friendly to Soviets. As I mentioned, I met Polish people and Polish officials in person way later, in the early 1990s, when I was on my trip to smuggle vodka to Poland. I did a total of 3 trips. First one was successful. We managed to cross the border and deliver vodka to Kolo, small Polish town. And 2 other times our patrols, our customs didn't let us through, so they removed us off the train, our whole tourist group. We were supposedly tourists traveling to see Poland, but in reality everyone was smuggling something. And at that time, Polish officers were really mean. They weren't friendly at all. So it's quite an interesting KGB document. Right now, Ukraine started publishing tons of unclassified KGB documents, as Russia still keeps their KGB archive secret, but Ukraine started publishing a lot of documents, so there's a lot of interesting stories coming out, so we'll be keep an eye on them, and if anything else will come up, I will let you guys know. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video, and for all of you guys who purchased my book, thank you very much, and please don't forget to put the review on Amazon. It will be greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. The topic of today's video is the life of gypsies or Roma people in the Soviet Union. I'm gonna share my personal experience, as well as we're gonna take a look at some used to be top secret KGB documents. This document was discovered by Ukrainian historian Eduard Andriushenko. I'll post a link to his Facebook page below this video. But before we start, it's time to learn some new Russian words. Tsigan. Tsigan. That's the Russian word for male gypsy person. Tsiganka. Tsiganka. This is the word for female gypsy person. Okay, so let's take a look at this KGB document. It's a report dated from November of 1953. An interesting detail, so this document is about criminal activity of gypsy people in Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, but it was titled Top Secret, Совершенно секретно. It's like totally secret if you translate exactly word for word. Совершенно секретно, totally secret. So this is just a criminal activity, but it's totally secret. And if you remember in my video Crime in the USSR, how safe was to live in the Soviet Union, I mentioned that it actually felt pretty safe to live in the USSR. And one of the reasons is a lot of criminal activity was top secret classified, so we never heard about it in newspapers or on TV. And this document is addressed to Comrade Kirichenko, the secretary of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine. And we talked about that guy already in one of my previous videos when we covered another different KGB document. And the title of this Declassified записка, so it's like a report об уголовных проявлениях, совершенных цыганами на территории Украинской ССР. So that's about criminal activities that were done by gypsies on the territory of Ukrainian Republic. From get-go, this document gives us very important information. It states that on the territory of Ukraine, at the current time, leading nomads' life, or they roaming, so кочуют, 1,800 gypsy families with a total amount of around 9,000 people. So in the early 50s in Ukraine, there were around 9,000 gypsy people, and they were leading nomadic lifestyle, so they didn't settle down. Another interesting detail that documents right away states that despite creating conditions for gypsies to get involved with society useful labor, most of them don't settle on permanent places of living in villages and such, and continue nomadic lifestyle. So there's another Russian word we need to learn. It's tabar, and that's the gypsy family that travel together. They call them tabar, almost like a camp. So then the document states that these tabars, these camps of nomadic gypsies that don't work, they travel around the republic and they do murders, they steal stuff, and also they do swindling, мошенничество. So there's what KGB claims that gypsies are up to. Then the document continues that gypsy women, циганки, they wander around villages and towns and they do begging, fortune-telling, гадание, quackery or sorcery. I'm not sure which is the correct word. So that's знахарство. So they like telling you they know how to heal you from some weird disease. And then, of course, they swindling and small petty crimes like stealing stuff. And another cute detail that it says that gypsy women also do reconnaissance to find out like who has money or jewelry, stuff like that, expensive stuff, and also how to sneak into apartment or a house later. So they also did reconnaissance work. Then the document provides some criminal statistics, stats for 1953, that militia, that's how we used to call Soviet cops, arrested already in 1953 222 criminals, gypsies, and 17 of those were arrested for killing, 28 people for robberies and banditism, so acting like bandits, 112 people for stealing. So there's a difference between robbery and like a petty crime stealing. So if it's they rob the store, I guess, and then if you steal some stuff from the people, then it's a stealing. Then also 38 people for beating other people, huliganство. Swindling, 25 people get arrested, and 2 people were arrested for sexual crimes. So I'm not sure, they're probably raping somebody or something like that. Then there is a list of most common and most dangerous kind of criminal activities that gypsies did in Ukraine in 1953. This one is really weird because it says that 2 traveling gypsies killed 11-year-old boy for no reason and cut the boy's head off. They got caught. And then in February of 1953, 3 gypsy guys were trying to break into the store, but they got caught by local cop, Kibenka. They started wrestling. A cop had a handgun. He shot one a gypsy guy, but others started hitting him with the shovels, killed him, and took his gun. On the way trying to escape, the one gypsy who got shot, he died. And later those guys got caught and arrested. And once again, I want to remind you, we never heard about any of these crimes. They're never published in newspapers. It's also only local people would know about it. There'll be some rumors going around, but in the newspapers, on the radio, they will never mention anything like that. In March of 1953, a group of gypsies, total of 4 males, were arrested. And apparently, in a period of from 1947 till 1953, so for 6 years, they were traveling around Ukraine and committed 73 crimes, including 7 robberies, 2 of which had murders with it, 37 small petty crimes, stealing stuff from personal belongings of the citizens, and 34 cases of stealing animals. Probably, I would say mostly horses. Gypsies were famous for being a professional horse stealers. And this sad list of crimes goes on and on. a gypsy couple, a guy and his wife, killed and robbed a kolkhoz worker lady. A group of criminals, they choked, задушили, so there was a guard that was watching over the horse barn, so they choked him to death and stole 2 horses. And then while they were escaping, they met another person riding a horse buggy, killed that guy, took his horse too. Then this document kind of rolls into conclusion that because of there's no rules that limit their moving around, so there's traveling gypsy people, they change their location often. They quite often don't have any documents, so use fake documents. They dodge the military service in Soviet army. They don't pay taxes, and they don't do any other duties for the state. So that's kind of like blank statement, like what's going on with the gypsy population. Then actually next statement in this document blew my mind, found it quite interesting. It says, recently they noticed this new trend that there's a new large groups of traveling gypsy families that arrive from other republics. So Ukraine kind of becoming a hotbed for the gypsy families that arrive from other places. And it said it's quite interesting detail that they being shipped by rail, so they use the railroad transportation that was provided by the local governments. So they like trying to get rid of gypsies, so they like, okay, let's get you on a train, no charge, you don't have to buy tickets, and just go. And it gives examples that on October 20th, in Zhdanov, which is at that time it was called Stalin region, it was renamed later. So train arrived from Leningrad and brought 300 gypsy people that were sent without tickets in from Belarus, Belarusian Soviet Republic. On same day in Nikopol, Dnipropetrovsk region, 150 gypsies arrived from Irkutsk, so that's Siberia. And it says in October, once again, October of this year, around Kiev, which is capital of Ukraine, my hometown, there are a concentration of large groups of gypsy families that arrived on the trains from Moscow and other regions of Russia. For example, on October 25th, train number 43 brought in 2 train cars from Moscow, 180 gypsies. So it sounds like Ukraine was like a California here in America, since it was warmer climate. Towards the fall and winter, a lot of gypsy families were moving down south to spend the winter. So it's like, okay, so Ukraine was like California, where a lot of homeless people move because it's warmer there in the winter. And the final kind of like chapter of this document, it's kind of has suggestion that in order to make gypsy families start working to be society useful labor, to do society useful labor, and stop criminal activities. So this is not, I apologize, so it's not KGB, it's actually MVD, so that's the militia of Ukraine. They asking a central committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine to start rolling on creating the law that forbids this nomadic style of lifestyle, and also find some solution about settling down the gypsy population of Ukraine. So as a result of these troubles with gypsy population, on October 5th, 1956, there was a law about, it's hard to translate in English, о приобщении к труду цыган, занимающих бродяжность, so about making these traveling gypsies, make them work pretty much. So they need to settle down and start working. So that's the law from October of 1956. So Soviet police, which were called militia, as I mentioned, during 1957, they located and учтены, so they put them on
on the books almost 71,000 of gypsy people. All the adults received passports. So this whole population was like total on their own, uncontrolled, without documents and such. And it says most of these people were assigned for places to live and work in different kolkhoz, collective farms, and factories, and so on. So I find it kind of interesting that officially there was a 0% unemployment in the Soviet Union. Everyone had a job. But at the same time, there's a number, 71,000 of gypsy people. They never worked, but the Soviet government never counted them as unemployed. And as I mentioned earlier, and the documents mentioned earlier, that gypsy families were quite involved into robberies and also stealing personal belongings. So here there's a secret report to the Central Committee of the Soviet Union now about what militia, our Soviet police, confiscated from some of the gypsy families in Russia at this time. And this list is actually quite amazing because it tells you what kind of stuff Soviet people kept at home. So they say, like they caught this gypsy family and they found government bonds, so облигации государственных займов for 416,000 rubles. Then they found 263 meters of fabrics, so silk and other type of fabrics, 2 gold coins and other like golden rings. They also found other family had also 754,000 worth of government bonds. Then they found medals, some of them actually quite rare. So 8 Lenin, Order of Lenin, 1 Order of Bogdan Khmelnytsky. This is like really expensive, I mean rare, and now it's expensive. A military award, 90 golden coins from the Tsar era, more medals, watches, golden rings. So you could tell that people were scooping up, gypsies were scooping up this stuff in apartments. Hardly any cash, because most people kept their cash, in the bank, but they kept the government bonds at home, and that's what the gypsy families were stealing. So in total, police confiscated 7,725,000 rubles, 7 million worth of government bonds, golden coins, expensive fabrics, rings, and other golden items for 500,000 rubles. Then 12 Lenin, Ордены Ленина, another Order of Трудовое Красное Знамя. So awards, medals, gold coins, and stuff like that, and a lot of the government bonds. Okay, so now we're done with the official part of my story about gypsy families in the Soviet Union. I was actually planning just to have one video, but it looks like there's gonna be way more to tell you yet, because I would like to share my personal experience and so on. So we're gonna stop this video right now. I hope you guys enjoy it, and my next video will be about my personal experience with gypsies. And if you guys have any questions, please post under this video and I'll try to answer them. And I want to thank again all my Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for your help, and we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye.